Chapter 42-47. Since everyone has decided to participate, I will tell everyone about the specific route we will take to enter the depths of the mountain, as well as the things to take note of. Chububi clapped his hands excitedly, then turned to look at Linny and said, "Give me your backpack." "Okay." Linny glanced at him and nodded. He turned his hand and handed the backpack over to Chububi. Chububi had personally handed it to him in the morning, but he didn't know what was inside. Chububi rummaged through the backpack for a moment, then took out 6 maps and distributed them to Linny and the others. Didn't they already have maps? Linny couldn't help feeling a little surprised, but when he took a closer look, he immediately understood that the two were different. Although they were both maps of Lufeng Forest, the one given by Chububi was much larger and more detailed than the one given by the teleportation array. Although the map sent by the transmission formation also had a location marked, it was not detailed, and there were very few landmarks and reference objects marked on it. But the map given by Chububi, from the top of the mountain to the small gullies and streams, everything was clearly marked. Even if it was the first time someone came to the Lufeng Forest, they would still be able to see it with a glance. Linny couldn't help but look at Chububi in surprise. Who exactly was this guy? An ordinary map was easy to find, but a detailed map like this was simply impossible for ordinary people. For cultivators who were interested in exploring Lufeng Forest, this map was already an incredible treasure. If the news spread, people would probably buy it even if it cost tens of thousands of spirit jades. It should be known that in a place like Lufeng Forest where danger lurked everywhere, a detailed map was a life-saving measure for cultivators. However, after comparing it with the map given by the teleportation array, Linny found that the map given by Chububi wasn't the entire Lufeng Forest, but only a part of it. Speaking of which, this particularly detailed map actually revolved around a route, and the destination of this route was marked on it. It was a small circle deep in the mountains. Everyone, look carefully. The small circle on the map is the possible location of the nascent ginseng, which is also the destination of our trip. As long as we follow the route marked on the map, we can safely reach there. Chububi solemnly vowed to everyone. Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. All of them were so excited that they were itching to give it a try. It was as if they could already see the baby ginseng waving at them and couldn't wait to set off immediately. "Brother Chu, forgive me for asking, but is this map reliable?" Linny suddenly asked. When Guodang Tao and the others heard this, they couldn't help feeling startled. They all turned to look at Chububi. They had been too excited just now, and only after hearing Lin Yi's words did they remember that there was still such a hidden danger. The map was detailed. However, if it wasn't reliable, then it wouldn't be a life-saving measure. Instead, it would become a fatal trap. He led everyone to report to the King of Hell. "That's a good question. I can tell you very clearly that there is no need to worry. This map is absolutely reliable." Chububi didn't take it seriously and said with a smile, "To be honest, this map was passed down by my Chu family's ancestors. One of my ancestors and his friends took this route when they came to the core of Lufeng Forest. That's why there is this map." "Family map?" Guodang Tao and Wang Feng were stunned. They didn't know much about Chububi, so they didn't expect this map to be his family map. No wonder it had never appeared on the market. "So, Brother Chu's ancestors should have found the nascent ginseng?" Linny immediately asked. Since this map was passed down by his ancestors, it meant that the ancestor of the Chu family must have seen the nascent ginseng. After that, the people of the Chu family should have tried many times in this area. After all, the temptation of the nascent ginseng was so great that ordinary people couldn't resist it. You can say that, according to the ancestor of the Chu family, he and his friends accidentally found the breeding place of the nascent ginseng, so he deliberately left this family map for the descendants of the Chu family to refer to. It's a pity that after him, no one in the Chu family could reach the late stage of the Gold Core realm. Without this strength, this family map is useless. It wasn't until I broke through that it could be used again," Chububi explained. Everyone nodded. Lufeng Forest was very dangerous. If one didn't even have the strength of the late stage of the Gold Core realm, they wouldn't dare to go deep into the core. Even if they were lucky enough to get the nascent ginseng, they wouldn't be able to use it for a while. After all, the gathering nascent golden elixir was a 6th grade elixir. It was only effective for those in the peak of the gold core realm who were about to condense their nascent soul. If they directly took it without the strength, not only would they not be able to break through, but their bodies would also explode. A good elixir would become a deadly poison. However, Linny didn't completely believe Chububi's words. It seemed that there was nothing wrong with the logic, but if he thought about it carefully, he could still find a lot of strange things. Did the ancestor of the Chu family get the nascent ginseng? If he got it, then it was very likely that he would become a master of the original infant realm. He would have a long life and wouldn't die so easily. Why didn't he come back himself? Also, even if the ancestor of the Chu family didn't get the nascent ginseng, or died in an accident, would the descendants of the Chu family really be so obedient? If they weren't strong enough, would they really just guard the treasure mountain and not step into Lufeng Forest? According to the thinking of a normal person, even if they weren't strong enough, they would definitely find a reliable person to help them since they were guarding such a family map. They wouldn't do nothing at all, right? Even if the martial world was dangerous and outsiders couldn't be trusted, there should be a way. They shouldn't be so helpless, right? Thinking about it carefully, these were all questions. However, Linny didn't directly question them. He didn't believe Chububi's lies, but he believed that the map was most likely real. Instead of turning hostile now, it was better to see what would happen next. Brother Chu, you said that you accidentally stayed in Lufeng Forest last time, and it was deep in the core area. You must have been exploring the way, right? Linny suddenly asked. Hee, you guessed it. Chububi was startled, but then he smiled and explained to everyone. I wanted to try last time, but because it was my first time, I didn't have any experience and didn't calculate the time well. So before I reached the core area, the miasma returned. I had no choice but to find a way to escape. However, it wasn't like I didn't gain anything. At least I personally verified the reliability of the map, so everyone doesn't have to worry. I see. Since Brother Chu has personally verified it, we can rest assured. Guodang Tao and the others nodded. To be continued. Chapter 42-48. Then, is there anything else you don't understand? If you have any questions, you can ask me now. Otherwise, once we get out of this tree hole, it won't be good for you to speak loudly. Chububi said to everyone. Speaking loudly in the dense forest was an absolute taboo. It would be a disaster if the nearby ferocious spirit beasts were alarmed. No more. Guodang Tao and Wang Feng looked at each other and shook their heads. The route was clearly marked on the map, and Lin Yi's questions allowed them to understand the reliability and origin of the map. There was nothing else to ask. What about you? Chububi deliberately looked at Lin Yi and raised his head. I have no problem either. Brother Chu has already explained it very clearly. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Of course, he wasn't like Guodang Tao, who was completely at ease with Chububi. The reason why he had asked so many questions just now, aside from testing the reliability of this so-called family map, was actually to numb Chububi. After all, according to a normal person's mindset, a person like Lin Yi would not be easily fooled. If he did not ask anything, then they would have to be careful. However, since he was so cautious and asked so many questions, he must have let down his guard. Therefore, they could relax a little. If it was only a 30% guess before, then now Lin Yi was at least 50% sure that this Chububi must have some tricks up his sleeves, but he couldn't tell what he was planning. Well, time is limited. Everyone, pack up and adjust yourselves. We'll set off immediately. Chububi nodded and motioned for everyone to prepare a little. Then, he immediately took the lead and walked out of the tree hole. Feng Hongyu, Guodang Tao, and Wang Feng followed closely behind with faces full of excitement. Lin Yi, who was the last to leave, gave Huang Xiaotao a look to tell her to follow him closely before following them out of the tree hole. Feeling the cold air outside, the excitement aroused by the nascent ginseng dissipated a little, and their minds became much clearer. All of them raised their vigilance and guarded against everything around them. Previously, when they were in the tree hole, everyone felt somewhat safe, but now that they were exposed in the forest, even if they were all gold core experts, they couldn't help but be on tenterhooks, fearing that they would suddenly encounter some powerful and ferocious spirit beast. Chububi took the lead, but he did not directly lead everyone forward. Instead, he took out a compass from Lin Yi's backpack and carefully compared it with his surroundings. Although he had already roughly confirmed the location, he was going to bring everyone deep into the mountains this time. Any mistake could cause everyone to lose their lives in vain, so it was necessary to confirm it again. In the deep mountains and dense forests, the most terrifying thing was to lose one's way, followed by spirit beasts. As Golden Core stage experts, they still had a chance of survival when facing a powerful spirit beast. However, if they lost their bearings, there would only be one outcome: complete annihilation. Lin Yi secretly paid attention to Chububi's every move and discovered that this person was not simple at all. Putting aside the doubts in his heart, from the beginning until now, this person's performance in all aspects could be considered impeccable. It was simply perfect. Take the current situation as an example. Even if an ordinary person held his very detailed family map, even if he used it with a compass. Under this thick miasma where it was difficult to see the sun, it was difficult to determine the location in a short time. Before Lin Yi made his debut in the secular world, he had received professional training in this area. However, even for him, it was difficult to completely correspond the real location with the map in a short time. However, Chububi was very familiar with this. In addition to his familiarity with the map, there was another more important reason, and that was the identification method used by Chububi, which was very novel in Lin Yi's view. Of course, it could also be said to be very professional. Not only did he need to rely on the compass, but Chububi also carefully checked the species of the surrounding vegetation, and even deliberately looked for some low-level medicinal herbs. After identifying them one by one, he would match them with the family map in his hands. On this family map, there were indeed detailed notes on the species of vegetation and medicinal herbs in a certain area. This was even comparable to a professional scientific map. If Guideng Tao and the others did not work hard in this aspect, even if they had this super detailed map, they would not be able to make much use of it. From this, it could be seen that Chububi had really made careful preparations for this. While Lin Yi was secretly surprised, he also looked forward to the nascent ginseng. No matter what tricks Chububi was playing, since he had made so many preparations, it was impossible that he was just fooling around. It seemed that the clue of the nascent ginseng was 80% real. Everyone be careful, be vigilant, and follow me closely. Don't fall behind. After Chububi confirmed the location and direction, he lowered his voice and said to everyone, then immediately took the lead to move forward. Everyone did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent, and hurriedly followed behind. If they were to fall behind in this kind of place, they would really not be able to find a place to cry. Along the way, everyone followed the map. Every once in a while, they would stop to reconfirm their position so that they wouldn't get lost. Other than Chububi leading the way, everyone else took turns to be on guard, not daring to lower their guard in the slightest. In order to prevent mental exhaustion from the continuous journey, even if everyone was a gold core stage master, they would consciously stop to meditate and rest every 3 hours. When the sky was completely dark, everyone would find a tree hole or a rock cave to rest for the night, and then set off after dawn. For a few days, apart from resting, everyone was hurrying on their journey. Although they occasionally encountered spirit beasts, because they were vigilant in time, every time it was daunting but not dangerous. Under the leadership of Chububi, everyone advanced all the way to the core of Lufeng Forest. Before this, everyone still had a little doubt about Chububi, but now, after a few days of personal experience, Guideng Tao and Wang Feng were already convinced by Chububi. Right now, they were already in the core of Lufeng Forest. If it was them, not to mention walking all the way here, they would not even be able to reach halfway. They would have long been lost in the vast dense forest, or simply become the rations of spirit beasts. Chapter 42-49. Even so, with the gradual changes in the surrounding environment, everyone's breathing unconsciously became much heavier. Looking closely at their surroundings, they could clearly feel that it had become much darker and gloomier than before. It could even be said that the further they went, the more silent and eerie the environment became. Along the way, they would at least occasionally encounter spirit beasts. Although this wasn't a good thing for the group who only wanted to hurry on with their journey, they at least felt a little livelier. Yet now, this ghastly feeling caused them to feel as if they'd unknowingly walked into the nine hells, and it was even to the extent that the surrounding flowers and plants weren't so verdant and luxuriant anymore. Instead, they'd become a mess, withered, yellow, and gloomy. Even if there was an occasional bit of green, it always gave others a horrifying and miserable feeling, and it caused them to unconsciously feel a chill run down their spines. Everyone's expression instantly changed. They could understand that the deeper regions were different from the outer regions, but the problem was that even the flora and fauna couldn't be so different from the outer regions, right? Although they were all powerful and dignified Golden Core experts, at this moment, they couldn't help but feel a little lacking in confidence. Just like ordinary people, they were filled with fear towards the unknown. In fact, because they knew more, most of the time, their courage might not even be comparable to that of ignorant and fearless ordinary people. Are we going the wrong way? This place is too eerie and scary. Huang Xiaotao couldn't help but pull Lin Yi a little fearfully and asked softly with a nervous look on her face. Although Huang Xiaotao looked obedient and quiet, she was actually a classic example of a person who was soft on the outside but hard on the inside. Moreover, after so many years of going out for training missions, her courage was far greater than that of ordinary girls. Even if she was alone in the deep mountains and forests, she might not be afraid. However, the scene in front of her was too horrifying. The surroundings were so quiet that everyone could even hear each other's breathing clearly. Although Huang Xiaotao was only speaking softly to Lin Yi, everyone in front could still hear her. In reality, it wasn't just Huang Xiaotao. Even pure men like Guo Dengtao and Wang Feng were a little fearful at this moment. After hearing this, they unconsciously shrunk their necks. This place was really too strange and completely different from what everyone had expected. If it was said that there were dragons and tigers crouching here and powerful spirit beasts everywhere, everyone would be able to accept it more. At least he was mentally prepared. However, the scene in front of him was lifeless. There wasn't even a single living thing to be seen. In addition, the light was so dim. As the saying goes, there must be something wrong when something is abnormal. This definitely wasn't right. Lin Yi held on to Huang Xiaotao, and he was similarly surprised and bewildered in his heart. He'd noticed this abnormality a long time ago, and he'd always been on high alert. He was on guard against every blade of grass and tree in his surroundings, but surprisingly, other than the eerie and terrifying environment, there was nothing wrong with this place. Lin Yi was puzzled. However, he wasn't too worried. His jade pendant had a warning function. As long as there was danger that he didn't notice, the jade pendant would automatically warn him. Until now, the jade pendant had not shown any abnormalities, and he did not sense any danger. Therefore, there was only one explanation. The eerie and strange scene in front of him wasn't a sign of danger or abnormality. It should have been like this all along, but he couldn't figure out the reason for it at the moment. It seems that your knowledge is really limited. Chu Bubi, who was walking at the front, turned around and looked at everyone's expressions. He couldn't help but smile. Could it be that you've only heard of the infant ginseng, but you've never heard of its unique growing environment? That's right. I see. With Chu Bubi's reminder, Guo Dengtao suddenly patted his head in realization. The nervousness in his heart also disappeared. The growing environment of the infant ginseng? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He really hadn't heard of it. After all, he had just reached the core formation stage not long ago. Let alone the nascent soul stage, he didn't even see the shadow of the golden core perfection stage. If he hadn't refined the gathering nascent golden pill for the will of heaven, he probably wouldn't even know what the infant ginseng was, let alone anything else. Not only Lin Yi, but Huang Xiaotao, Wang Feng, and even Chu Bubi's cultivation companion, Feng Hongyu, were also at a loss. Their strength was far from that level, and they hadn't done any special homework in this area. It was normal that they didn't know much about the infant ginseng. Taozi, why don't you explain it to them so that they won't be so nervous and scare themselves? Chu Bubi instructed. At the same time, he continued to walk forward, signaling everyone to hurry up and not fall behind. Okay, it seems that everyone still doesn't know that the infant ginseng is just what we usually call it. It actually has another name, and in a sense, this name is more appropriate. It can also explain our current surrounding environment. Guodengtao pretended to be mysterious, and kept everyone in suspense. What is its name? Hurry up and say it! Wang Feng pushed him. Perhaps it was because he was injured before, but his body was already a bit uncomfortable. In this gloomy and terrifying environment, he unconsciously felt his hands and feet turn cold, and his heart trembled. Okay, the other name of the infant ginseng is ghost ginseng. Guodengtao paused on purpose. Seeing that everyone was looking at him curiously, he continued. As for the reason, it's not because this thing looks like a ghost, but because it usually grows in places with heavy yin energy, such as mass graves. Mass graves? No wonder this place has become so gloomy! Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. After knowing the ins and outs of the matter, they were no longer nervous. No matter what, they were gold core experts, so they shouldn't be afraid of a mass grave. The reason why they were so nervous was because of the unknown. That's right, according to the markings on the map, there should be a spirit beast burial mound not far from here, so it's normal for this place to be a bit gloomy. Moreover, this also proves that my map is accurate, so everyone doesn't need to worry about anything, Chu Bubi said without turning his head. Indeed, this time, following Brother Chu is really not in vain. Guodengtao and the others were suddenly happy. When they looked at the surrounding environment, not only were they no longer nervous and afraid, but they also felt more excited. After all, this meant that the infant ginseng of their dreams was getting closer and closer. Chapter 4250. Under Chu Bubi's lead, the group quickened their pace and continued to move forward. As expected, not long after, the group discovered some scattered bones on the ground. They could tell that these were the bones of spirit beasts. At first, there were only a few scattered bones, but the further they went, the denser the bones became. Towards the end, there were piles and piles of bones. At this time, the sun had already set in the west. Inadvertently, the group could see some faint, floating phosphorescence among the piles of bones. This was what people often referred to as will-o'-the-wisp. The originally gloomy environment became even more terrifying under the illumination of the ghost flames. Even though everyone already knew the cause and effect, they still couldn't help but look at each other in dismay at this moment. Their scalps felt slightly numb. Linny compared the map in his hand. Looking at the situation, they had indeed arrived at the spirit beast unmarked burial mounds. It was said that all living things in the world, as long as they had intelligence, could sense the time of their death in advance. The more intelligence they had, the more accurate their senses would be, and the earlier they would die. The reason why spirit beasts were spirit beasts was because they were born with spirit chi, which was much stronger than other species. There were rumors that many spirit beasts could sense the time of their death a few months in advance, so they could make preparations in advance. Although this sounded mysterious, it wasn't purely a rumor. Many people had experienced it before. After all, spirit beasts could be seen everywhere on Heavenly Rank Island. They would often run away from home before they died, and in the end, they would die in the unmarked burial mounds. This kind of thing was not uncommon. In fact, this kind of thing often happened in the secular world. Many household pets would often experience a similar situation before they died. Linny had heard from Hung Zhong and the others that almost every gathering place of spirit beasts on Heavenly Rank Island, especially those deep in the mountains and forests, had a spirit beast unmarked burial mounds. Almost all the spirit beasts in that area would take the initiative to come to the unmarked burial mounds when they sensed that they were about to die of old age. Then, they would quietly wait there for their death. Although the spirit beast had a strict hierarchy, and under normal circumstances, the spirit beasts in the outer regions with insufficient strength would not be able to enter the depths of the unmarked burial mounds. However, when they were about to die, they would be able to enter without any obstruction. None of the spirit beasts would stop it. This was a common understanding between all the spirit beasts. Linny carefully looked at the map. As long as they passed through the spirit beast unmarked burial mounds, it meant that they were not far from their destination. If everything went smoothly, the nascent ginseng would be right in front of them. At this time, Linny felt that Huang Xiaotao's breathing was a little rapid. She was obviously nervous and afraid. Linny gently held her hand to comfort her. He gestured to her not to be afraid. The surroundings were deathly silent. The people in front could also clearly feel Huang Xiaotao's abnormality. Gua Dengtao even turned around and smiled, giving her a comforting expression. After all, she was a girl. Even the guys found this place creepy, so it was reasonable for her to be a little afraid. Humph, since you're so cowardly. Then don't come out and take risks. You won't be of any use at all. There are so many things to do. Feng Hongyu saw this. She turned her head and looked at Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao with a look of ridicule. She took the opportunity to taunt them. Along the way, she had mocked and ridiculed the two of them. It seemed that if she did not do this, she would not be able to display her sense of superiority. She felt uncomfortable holding it in. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao had always treated her as air and could not be bothered to pay attention to her. However, this time, before Feng Hongyu could finish her sentence, she was suddenly interrupted by Huang Xiaotao's sharp scream. Whoosh! Not a sound could be heard. Huang Xiaotao's scream was particularly sharp and immediately startled a black mass of flying beasts in the vicinity. There was no warning at all, and it gave everyone a great shock. Upon closer inspection, these were not powerful spirit beasts. They were just ordinary carrion-eating crows and similar birds. This place was a graveyard for spirit beasts. Unless it was a spirit beast that was about to die, no other spirit beast would come to this place. Are you crazy? Why are you panicking? You're such a coward, so why are you trying to scare us to death? Feng Hongyu's beautiful face turned pale, and she scolded Huang Xiaotao when she regained her senses. She was not the only one. Gua Dengtao, Wang Feng and the others had ugly expressions on their faces as well. Previously, their surroundings had been deathly silent, and there had been no movement at all. They never thought that there would be so many carrion-eating crows hiding in the dense forest. Under the night sky, the pairs of glowing eyes made them feel like corpses being stared at by the crows, and they could not help but shudder. There's a ghost! Huang Xiaotao cried out in a trembling voice. She then burrowed into Lin Yi's arms and trembled with fear. No matter how strong her heart was, she was still a weak girl. Lin Yi smiled and gently stroked Huang Xiaotao's back tenderly. However, when he looked in the direction of Huang Xiaotao's finger, his expression instantly froze. Perhaps it was because the miasma above their heads had thinned at night, or perhaps it was because this place was too strange and horrifying, but at this moment, everyone could clearly see a blood moon above their heads. The moon was even brighter than it was during the day. However, there was a faint bloody aura, and they could even smell the stench of blood and decay. Under the illumination of the blood-colored moonlight, an extremely strange and evil scene not far in front of them suddenly caused Lin Yi and the others to stop in their tracks. A spirit beast that looked like a rhinoceros from the secular world had its head drooping weakly to one side. Its neck had also been twisted into a shocking and strange angle. Only a thin layer of skin was left connecting its huge body. Its huge head was dragged on the ground, leaving a long dark red trail of blood. On the side of its body, there was a bloody hole the size of half a person. Its intestines and internal organs flowed all over the ground, and even now, it was still dripping blood. Perhaps it was a psychological effect, but even though they were separated by more than 100 feet, Lin Yi and the others could clearly smell the pungent stench coming from its body. If it was just that, then it would be fine. They could pinch their noses and bear with it for a while. However, the problem was that this thing was already in this state, but it was still not dead. The head that was dragged on the ground was eating something with a ferocious expression. Upon closer inspection, the thing it was chewing on was the intestines and internal organs that had flowed out of its stomach. As it ate, blood bubbled up from the corner of its mouth. Chapter 42-51. Seeing this horrifying scene, not only was Huang Xiaotao frightened, but even Lin Yi felt his scalp go numb. His hair stood on end and his hair stood on end. 3W. What the hell is this place? How could it be so creepy? Not only Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, but Guodangtao and Wang Feng also saw this scene. In an instant they felt as if their scalps were about to explode and their temples were throbbing. The two golden elixir realm cultivators almost fainted from fear. What the hell, even if they met an original infant stage super spiritual beast, it would not be as horrifying as this. Is this thing dead or alive? Where did it come from? Humph, coming to a place like this to act like a spoiled child and show off your love. I say, is there something wrong with you? Trash will always be trash. Not only do you have no abilities, you don't even have the guts. Taozi, look at what kind of trash you've found. Even now, Feng Hongyu hadn't noticed the rhinoceros monster's presence. She continued to taunt Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao without even looking at them. Seeing the direction she was walking in, Guodangtao and the others' expressions became even more strange. They looked at each other and were speechless for a long time. What are you guys standing there for? Hurry up and catch up with Brother Chu. Do you want to fall behind and die here? Feng Hongyu saw that everyone's expressions were strange and did not react. She continued to taunt them as she walked forward. Caw! Suddenly, a crow cawed, startling a carrion crow that was fighting over the intestines at her feet. Feng Hongyu was immediately startled, vaguely feeling that she had stepped on a string of sticky things. Caught off guard, she suddenly slipped and lost control of her body, stumbling forward. With a thud, the world became silent. Guodangtao and the others were dumbfounded. Even Lin Yi had a strange expression on his face when he saw this scene. He could not speak for a long time. Due to the accidental fall, Feng Hongyu actually plunged into the bloody hole on the side of the rhinoceros spirit beast's body. What is this? Ah! With a piercing scream, Feng Hongyu hurriedly struggled to get out. Her entire body was covered in dark red blood and bodily fluids, and there was even half an intestine hanging from her shoulder. Coincidentally, her face was right in front of the head that was chewing on the intestines on the ground. No matter who it was, such an encounter would surely cause them to go mad from fright. Feng Hongyu had been acting all high and mighty just a moment ago, but now she was so scared that she peed her pants. Feng Hongyu didn't even bother to crawl. She just sat on the ground and screamed as she desperately retreated. She left a string of wet marks on the ground. She didn't know if it was blood or urine, or if it was a mixture of the two. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. This was really retribution. It was too fast. Chububi, who was leading the way, quickly turned back when he heard the noise. He hurriedly ran over and helped Feng Hongyu up from the ground. In a panic, Feng Hongyu finally grabbed a life-saving straw. Without saying anything, she screamed and hid in Chububi's arms. Smelling the pungent smell of blood, he helplessly watched Feng Hongyu rubbing the sticky and disgusting things on his body. Chububi's face instantly turned green. The corner of his mouth twitched for a long time, but he was stunned and couldn't say a word. It's okay. It's okay, don't be afraid. A look of disgust flashed across Chububi's face. Then, he resisted the nauseating disgust and hugged Feng Hongyu with his arms as he comforted her. Lin Yi looked at him, then at Huang Xiaotao in his arms. He was instantly amused. The other party had such a cultivation companion. Comparisons were odious, and goods were thrown away. Guodangtao and Wang Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they saw this scene. They tried hard to hold back their laughter for a long time. A woman like Feng Hongyu was simply a rare weirdo. After comforting her for a while, Feng Hongyu's emotions finally stabilized. However, when she looked at the disgusting things on her body, she turned her head and vomited. Chububi waited on the side with his arms crossed. He looked at the mucus on his clothes. If it wasn't for the important plan, he would have kicked her. Everyone, don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. They aren't aggressive. Chububi saw everyone looking at him with a strange expression, so he could only force a smile and explain to everyone. Everyone nodded. There was no doubt about this. After all, Feng Hongyu had plunged into the other party's stomach, but the other party didn't react at all. Otherwise, if it was aggressive, Feng Hongyu would have been eaten clean. Brother Chu, what the hell is that thing? It looks so creepy. Guodeng Tao couldn't help but ask. Even if they knew that it wasn't aggressive, just looking at it still made people tremble. It's just some spirit beasts that have formed their primordial spirits. After their physical bodies die, their primordial spirits naturally can't be kept, so they gradually disappear. They don't have any sanity to speak of, but they still have the instinct to survive, so they stay on their decaying bodies like vengeful spirits. That's why there's such a strange scene. In fact, they aren't aggressive. Chububi explained to everyone. I see. Everyone nodded. Everyone was a cultivator at the Gold Core stage, so they naturally knew about the primordial spirit. Chububi's explanation was reasonable and reasonable. Vengeful spirits were not rare for cultivators. Since there was a primordial spirit, it was not surprising that there were vengeful spirits that ordinary people talked about, because the two were actually the same existence. The ghost thing on Lin Yi's body was such a clear evidence. After listening to Chububi's explanation, Feng Hongyu, who was almost scared out of her wits, finally recovered, but she didn't dare to taunt others as arrogantly as before. She lowered her head and cleaned the dirty things on her body with a red face. Huang Xiaotao, who was hiding in Lin Yi's arms, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. People were most afraid of the unknown. Since this phenomenon could be explained, then there was nothing to be afraid of. Lin Yi lowered his head and pondered, thinking about whether Chububi's explanation was reliable or not. At this moment, a reminder suddenly sounded in his mind. He's lying, don't be fooled. En? He hadn't heard this voice for a long time. Lin Yi was stunned for a moment, and then he reacted with surprise and joy. Senior Ghost! Chapter 4252. Oh? Ghost cultivator? This was the first time Lin Yi had heard of this word. He couldn't help but ask. Senior Ghost, what exactly is a ghost cultivator? It's a type of evil cultivator among you human cultivators. Didn't you come here to kill Wu Baoliang? This guy should be an evil cultivator, but he used the blood of a virgin to cultivate, while the one in front of us used the primordial spirit of a spirit beast to cultivate. The ghostly thing's tone carried a bit of cold killing intent. No matter what, it was still an elder of the spirit beast clan, and the existence of any ghost cultivator meant that a large number of spirit beasts would inevitably be killed. Not to mention that even the primordial spirit was not spared, so they wouldn't be able to die peacefully. The ghostly thing didn't have a character that abhorred evil. If it was just an ordinary fight, whether it was between humans and spirit beasts, or between spirit beasts, it would be too lazy to care. This was because the weak were prey to the strong. Survival of the fittest was the law of nature that had existed since ancient times. Even if they died, it could only be said that their skills were inferior to others, and there was nothing to blame. However, ghost cultivators were different. The existence of this kind of person was already against the natural order. Not to mention the heavens, even if the heavens could tolerate them, the ghostly thing would be the first to not spare them. I understand, but why did Chububi make up such a reason? Is he a ghost cultivator? Lin Yi communicated with the ghostly thing while looking at Chububi in front of him. I don't know about that. He hasn't shown his true strength yet. Maybe he's pretending to know, or maybe he knows, but he's deliberately hiding it for some reason. Anyway, you should be careful. The ghostly thing cackled. And I know. Lin Yi nodded secretly. He originally felt that Chububi had hidden evil intentions. Now that the ghostly thing reminded him, this feeling became even stronger. As the saying goes, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. In fact, putting aside this kind of strangeness, Chu Bubi had suddenly shared the news of the infant ginseng with outsiders who were completely unrelated to him. The matter itself was already very problematic. Even if it was as Chu Bubi had said that he needed more people to help him find the infant ginseng, but after all, the fertile water should not flow to outsiders. Why would he give such a great opportunity to outsiders, who he had no friendship with, and not look for his own friends and relatives? His social relations should not be so miserable that he could not even gather a few people, right? Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Guodang Tao and Wang Feng had taken the bait because Chu Bubi was good at fooling people. They themselves were also blinded by the super temptation of the infant ginseng. But Lin Yi had always been able to control his state of mind very well. He was able to look on coldly from the sidelines. That was how he was able to see all the strange things happening to Chu Bubi. Senior Ghost, were you in seclusion during this period of time? Lin Yi asked. Now, strictly speaking, they were standing on the edge of the South Island. Lin Yi couldn't help but be curious. The ghostly thing suddenly woke up. Did it want to go back to the Spirit Beast clan to have a look? Seclusion? You can say that. The ghostly thing smiled indifferently. It should not be a traditional seclusion. But with Lin Yi's current realm, he might not be able to explain it clearly in a few words. He couldn't explain it clearly in 1 or 2 sentences, so he was too lazy to go into detail. This is the South Island then you? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. What? Are you so anxious to drive me away? The ghostly thing asked back with a playful tone. No, how could it be? Lin Yi couldn't help sweating. As the saying goes, having an old person at home is like having a treasure. Not to mention that the ghostly thing was a great god. He was more than happy that it was willing to stay in his jade pendant. How could it drive him away? That's it. The ghostly thing was just a primordial spirit, but it curled its lips. I just want to ask, Senior Ghost, do you want to take this opportunity to go home and have a look? Lin Yi said helplessly. According to the ghostly thing itself, it had been many years since it went down to the secular world. Now that it was rare to come to the South Island, it couldn't just pass by without going home. What's the point of going back to see me in this ghostly appearance? Boy, remember that none of the Spirit Beast clan is kind. If those old guys really know that I look like this, I won't even be enough to fill the gap between their teeth. The ghostly thing said with a half-mocking and half-sighing tone. Lin Yi couldn't help being speechless. Then he remembered that compared with human cultivators, the Spirit Beast clan followed the principle of the law of the jungle more. If it were a human being, even if he had this idea, he would at least pretend on the surface. But if it were a spirit beast, as soon as it saw that the ghost was so weak, it would directly attack it, no matter whether it was an elder or not. For the ghost now, the South Island was not a warm home, but a real dragon's pool and tiger's den. The example of Zhongliju was still vivid in his mind. It didn't matter if you were a giant before or not, once you lost your strength, it meant that you lost your status. Kid, don't think too much. I will definitely go back to the Spirit Beast clan, but not now. As for how long I have to wait, that depends on when you can help me. You should improve your strength first. If you can really get the baby ginseng, it will be a good opportunity. The ghostly thing smiled. Okay, I understand. Lin Yi nodded secretly. When he first came to Sky Class Island, this ghostly thing asked him to help, but now that he was already a Golden Core early stage master, he still wasn't strong enough. It seemed that this wasn't an easy task. He had to work hard. After communicating with the ghostly thing for so long, only a short moment had passed in the outside world. Everyone was still thinking about Chu Bubi's explanation, so naturally, they didn't notice Lin Yi's expression. Only Huang Xiaotao, who was in his arms, felt a little strange. What's wrong? Huang Xiaotao blinked and looked up at him. Chu Bubi and the others heard the sound and thought that Lin Yi had discovered something unusual. They couldn't help but turn around and look at him in surprise. Oh, it's nothing. It's just that after listening to Brother Chu's explanation, I thought about the ghostly thing in the eyes of ordinary people, and I felt a little emotional. Lin Yi smiled calmly. Haha, people are so stupid. A lot of people who think they are smart think that the ghostly thing is just a rumor. They don't know that there's no smoke without a hole. The reason why these legends exist is because they are real. Chububi smiled faintly. Chapter 4253. Thinking back on this journey, Chububi's image in everyone's eyes could be said to be perfect. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but feel honored to be able to become teammates with such a person. Seeing that the infant ginseng was so close at hand, this was a blessing that couldn't be cultivated for several lifetimes. Linny couldn't help shaking his head when he saw this scene. Chububi was really good at acting. Linny had been on the Heaven Stage Island for more than a year, and had seen many people, but he had never seen anyone as bewitching as Chububi. The best way to gain other people's trust was to make them worship you. Chububi had done this to perfection. Linny became even more vigilant towards Chububi, but he did not tell Huang Xiaotao about it. After all, the environment was too quiet. If there was even the slightest movement, no matter how soft the voice was, the people in front would be able to hear it. What's more, even if he could hide from these people's eyes and ears, Linny could not guarantee that Huang Xiaotao would be able to remain as calm and collected as him after knowing this. In front of a shrewd person like Chububi, any unnaturalness would become a flaw. Linny didn't want to take this risk. He didn't make a sound along the way because he was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. If he revealed a flaw at this time, then he would have to give up halfway. Under Chububi's lead, everyone continued to follow the route on the map. More and more strange creatures similar to the rhinoceros spirit beast appeared in front of them. Some had no head, some had no limbs, some only had half a body, and some were just a pile of bones. All kinds of strange and evil existences challenged everyone's visual nerves. Although everyone had already heard Chububi's explanation and knew that these things were not aggressive, knowing it was one thing, and seeing it with their own eyes was another matter. Even if they knew that these things would not eat people, they still could not help but feel their scalps go numb when they saw this creepy scene. Linny! I'm a little scared. It's like it's real. Huang Xiaotao stuck close to Linny. He was so nervous that even his voice was trembling. It's okay. I'm here. They can't hurt you. Linny gently held her hand and comforted her. And Huang Xiaotao nodded weakly. Although she was still unconsciously nervous and afraid, as long as Linny was holding her, she felt much more at ease. Unlike the others who were kept in the dark, Lin Yi knew clearly after the ghost's reminder. These were not vengeful spirits that refused to leave, but low-level ghost talisman devils. They were evil things left behind by ghost cultivators. The reason why they were not aggressive was because they were all defective goods. But even so, when he saw such strange scenes one after another, especially when the surroundings were so gloomy and terrifying, even Lin Yi's forehead couldn't help but be covered in a layer of fine sweat. He was out of breath. Not only Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, but Guodang Tao, Wang Feng, and the others, especially Feng Hongyu, who had just made a big mistake, were also trembling at this moment. With every step she took, her whole body couldn't help but tremble. She no longer had the mood to taunt others as arrogantly as before. Perhaps it was because she had been frightened just now that she had seen a little bit of a horrifying scene. Feng Hongyu immediately screamed in fright. Even the people behind her were nervous. At first, they were just afraid. Originally, they were just afraid, but with a woman like Feng Hongyu, even if they weren't sick, they would be scared to the point of mental illness. Among the people, only Chububi didn't show any signs of nervousness or fear. He didn't care about this at all. He strode forward calmly and confidently as before. Lin Yi, who was behind him, couldn't help but be puzzled when he saw this scene. Was Chububi fearless because he was ignorant, or was he already used to this kind of thing? Even if this person really thought that his far-fetched explanation was the truth of the matter, in such a strange environment, it was impossible for him to not show any signs of abnormality, right? Even if the ignorant were fearless, there would always be a limit, right? No matter how courageous one was, in the face of unknown and unfamiliar evil things, they would still be afraid. This was human nature, unless they were no longer human. Chu Booby was obviously not a human. After thinking about it, Lin Yi could only conclude that his behavior could be attributed to two situations. Either this person wasn't as calm as he appeared, and was actually as nervous and fearful as everyone else, but he didn't want others to see through him, so he deliberately put on a brave face. Or this person had long been accustomed to everything in front of him, just like a forensic doctor who saw dead people every day. This kind of thing had become natural, and naturally, he wouldn't have any fear. And what made Lin Yi even more puzzled was that Chu Booby seemed to be very familiar with this place. He walked with his head held high, almost without any hesitation. Even if there was a blood moon illuminating the place, the light was definitely not good, not to mention that it was his first time coming to this place. Just by referring to the route map, wouldn't it take a lot of time? How could he not have the slightest bit of hesitation? This in itself was already a big flaw. Chu Booby had inadvertently revealed his fox's tail, but everyone was shocked by the strange environment, and their hearts were filled with fear. They didn't pay attention to his performance at all, but it was a pity that this couldn't be hidden from Lin Yi's eyes. "Brother Chu, did you come here last time?" Lin Yi suddenly asked without batting an eyelid. "Of course Chu Booby subconsciously wanted to answer, but then he couldn't help but stare blankly. He looked back at Lin Yi meaningfully, paused, and said, "I haven't been here before. From the map, this place is not far from our destination. If I came here last time, even if the time is limited, I would not be willing to go back empty-handed." "Why do you ask?" "Oh, actually, it's nothing much. I just noticed that Brother Chu seems to be very familiar with this area. Furthermore, we didn't encounter any danger along the way. I believe that for anyone, this should be a very unbelievable thing." Lin Yi smiled naturally. "That's why I thought you'd already made a trip there last time, Brother Chu. If it wasn't for you, we might have all been wiped out." Chapter 42-54. At this time, not only Lin Yi, but Guodang Tao and the others also pricked up their ears. Before, they were confused by the situation and were unaware of this flaw. However, those who could become middle-stage gold core masters could not be fools. Now, after listening to Lin Yi's reminder, there was a clear suspicion in their eyes. Chu Booby knew that if this problem could not be explained clearly immediately, and could not convince them, all the previous efforts were likely to be in vain. He had already realized that he was a little too hasty because he was getting closer and closer to his destination. Otherwise, he wouldn't have exposed such an obvious flaw. Once this flaw was discovered, it wouldn't be something that could be brushed off with a simple excuse of ample preparation. It was all because of this Lin Yi. Chu Booby secretly glanced at Lin Yi angrily. Seeing that everyone's eyes were on him, he did not dare to hesitate too much and immediately turned his mind. "I won't hide it from you all. In addition to this map, my Chu family's ancestor also left behind a passage of words about their exploration experience at that time. It is very valuable as a reference, and I have a photographic memory since I was a child. No matter what I heard or saw, I can always remember it very clearly. After hearing it from the elders of my family, I remembered it in my heart, and now it has come in handy, so I can do this," Chu Booby casually explained. When he said this, Guodang Tao and the others suddenly felt relieved. Not only did they not feel that this was a flaw, but they also felt that Chu Booby was really reliable. The fact that Chu Booby was willing to take out this family map and share it with everyone was already a very magnanimous act. The value of the Chu clan's ancestors' words was no less than that of the route map. If they were in Chu Booby's shoes, they definitely wouldn't have revealed it to them in advance. If he recklessly shared all the information, what would he do if someone suddenly went back on his word? Although Chu Booby was the strongest among them, they were in the depths of Lufeng Forest. Anyone who wanted to betray them only needed to go into the dense forest. Chu Booby would definitely not dare to easily chase them, so as the initiator, he must hide a little. "So that's how it is. It's all thanks to Brother Chu." Lin Yi nodded with a faint smile, but he was still non-committal in his heart. Being fully prepared was one thing, but actually doing it was another matter. Chu Bubi's explanation could deceive Guodang Tao and others, but in Lin Yi's opinion, it was still very far-fetched. Lin Yi thought to himself. Chu Bubi was really good at bewitching people. It was unknown whether he had prepared this speech beforehand or just made it up on the spot. No matter which one it was, it only proved that this person was shrewd and could not be underestimated. All right, everyone, there's no need to pay too much attention to these things in front of us. They're just toys to scare people. Let's hurry up. We are not far from our destination. The nascent ginseng is right in front of us. Chu Bubi encouraged everyone. All right. Upon hearing the two words, infant ginseng, everyone's eyes immediately lit up. They immediately threw the doubts that had just emerged to the back of their minds. All of them were excited and followed Chu Bubi to speed up. At this time, even the principle of not traveling at night in the dense forest had been completely forgotten by them. Anyway, there was still a blood moon above their heads, and the light was not bad. Who cared so much? Lin Yi saw this scene from behind. He knew that Chu Bubi was afraid that a long night would bring trouble, so he sped up. Pulling Huang Xiaotao, Lin Yi immediately followed the crowd. No matter what Chu Bubi was up to, as long as they were cautious, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if there was an unexpected danger, there was still the jade pendant to warn them. They followed Chu Bubi all the way. Perhaps because this was the spirit beast graveyard, they did not encounter any danger except for some low-level ghost talisman demons from time to time. After an hour, there was a sudden medicinal fragrance in the air. When they smelled it carefully, it made them feel refreshed from head to toe. Even the qi in their bodies became active involuntarily. Everyone suddenly looked at each other, surprised and surprised. At their level of strength, if it was just an ordinary heaven and earth treasure, even if they took it, it would not have much effect. But now, they just smelled it, and it had such a wonderful effect. The level of this heaven and earth treasure, wouldn't it break through the sky? After smelling this medicinal fragrance, Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He felt that it was a little familiar. After smelling it carefully a few more times, he finally remembered that this was the smell of nascent ginseng. When he refined the gathering nascent soul golden pill for the will of heaven, the main material used was nascent ginseng. Naturally, he was not unfamiliar with this smell. In fact, the final gathering nascent soul golden pill had a similar smell. If I'm not wrong, this is the fragrance of nascent ginseng. Chu Bubi could not help but be stunned. Then he suddenly changed his previous elegance and shouted excitedly. Yes, we are almost there. Really? Everyone was shocked and confused, and after hearing this, they almost jumped up in excitement. However, they were still in disbelief, as if they were dreaming. We really found the nascent ginseng? That's right, this is definitely the fragrance of nascent ginseng. Although I have never seen it before, Grand Master Zhang Liju's Rare Herbs collection of Heaven-class island has a special record of it. The nascent ginseng grows in a place full of ghost energy, but it has an extraordinary fragrance. It is refreshing and can make people feel refreshed and full of essence. Chu Bubi said confidently. Taking out Grand Master Zhang Liju's proof, it was reasonable and matched perfectly. No one doubted him at all. They all breathed out in relief and said excitedly, We are finally here. This is great. Following Chu Bubi to the core of Lufeng Forest was a huge risk. If they were not careful, they would lose their lives here. But now, seeing that the nascent ginseng was within their reach, and even the fragrance was so clear, all their worries were gone. There was only one thing left, and that was to follow the fragrance to find the nascent ginseng and bring it out of Lufeng Forest. Those with bigger ambitions could think of a way to get someone to refine this nascent ginseng into a gathering nascent pill. If they really couldn't wait, they could trade this nascent ginseng. Chapter 4255. After the excitement, everyone quickened their pace under Chu Bubi's lead. The nascent ginseng that they yearned for in their dreams was right in front of them, and everyone was clearly unable to restrain themselves. It was as if even the exhaustion that had accumulated over the past few days had been swept away and had become light. However, Lin Yi was a little puzzled at this time. To be honest, from the beginning, he had been suspicious of Chu Bubi. He always felt that this person had an unspeakable conspiracy, and all the strange things along the way did prove this point. However, the medicinal fragrance of the nascent ginseng couldn't be deceived. Others had never seen the nascent ginseng before, so they could say that they were deceived by Chu Bubi, but Lin Yi had personally used the nascent ginseng to refine pills. As an alchemist, the smell of this kind of super-rare material, as long as one smelled it once, it was impossible to forget it. This point couldn't be faked at all, and it was impossible to deceive Lin Yi. But if this smell was really the nascent ginseng, then what was Chu Bubi's conspiracy? Using every possible means to bring so many people here, and now they were even about to find the nascent ginseng. Going around in such a big circle, what was his ulterior motive? So far, although there were all kinds of strange things about Chu Bubi, he didn't cause any substantial harm to everyone. Instead, as he said, he really brought everyone to the destination, and they were only a few steps away from the legendary nascent ginseng. Moreover, the addition of everyone so far had not helped him at all, including Lin Yi. He didn't have any use at all, and just blindly followed him. Could it be that Chu Bubi deliberately brought them here just to quickly find the nascent ginseng, and there was no other bad intention? Could it be that he was really thinking too much, and this person was not as scheming as he thought? However, all the strange things that happened along the way, how could he explain it? Lin Yi looked at the back of Chu Bubi in front of him, and couldn't help but be confused. Intuition told him that there must be a problem with this person, but it was really hard to say where the problem was. Holding Huang Xiaotao's hand, Lin Yi continued to follow the crowd in front of him. He was not afraid that Chu Bubi would turn hostile at the end, but he was afraid that Chu Bubi would have other plans that he could not guard against. If he was not careful, it would be troublesome. Of course, no matter what, Lin Yi's expectation for the infant ginseng was no less than that of anyone else present. Otherwise, he would not have taken Huang Xiaotao to take the risk despite knowing that Chu Bubi had hidden evil intentions. He pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger, and the only thing he wanted was the infant ginseng. Therefore, Lin Yi was very excited to be able to smell the fragrance of the infant ginseng. Otherwise, if it was purely a trap set by Chu Bubi and there was no infant ginseng at all, then it would be meaningless for him to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. Because of the encouragement from the fragrance of the nascent ginseng, everyone had long since thrown a little bit of nervousness and fear in their hearts to the back of their minds. Even if they saw some ghost talisman devil, they didn't care at all. Even Feng Hongyu, who had been greatly stimulated and left a shadow in her heart, followed Chu Bubi all the way without any signs of timidity. However, everyone found that something was not quite right. The frequency of the terrifying things like the ghost talisman devil began to gradually decrease, but the atmosphere of the surrounding environment became colder and colder. Under everyone's eyes, the originally clear path in the jungle began to become blurred. Even the corner of everyone's eyes could even see a ghostly shadow flashing from time to time. Although they couldn't see clearly, the scene of the shadow jumping was real. They were all gold core stage masters with firm minds. They could be sure that this was definitely not an illusion. There must be something in it, and it was probably the unclean thing in the legend. At this moment, the previously thin fog had unknowingly become a lot thicker. Just now, they could clearly see the blood moon hanging upside down in the sky, but now, when they looked up at the sky, it was simply a blur. Even the figures that were only a few feet away from each other became blurred in the fog, and there was even a feeling of vague shadows. Coupled with the ghostly shadow flashing from the corner of their eyes from time to time, even though everyone was excited because of the infant ginseng, they couldn't help but shudder at this moment, and felt a little guilty. Huang Xiaotao was so scared that she subconsciously stuck close to Lin Yi, not daring to look at the surrounding scene. Gui Dangtao, Wang Feng, Feng Hongyu, and the others in front were all tiptoeing like frightened birds, not daring to stride forward like before. In Lin Yi's heart, seeing this scene, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Although he wasn't afraid, there were ghostly shadows flashing from time to time. They felt that they were not far from them, but they couldn't see clearly what they were. In this situation, it was impossible for them to not be afraid. Fortunately, Lin Yi could be sure that the surrounding fog was not the poisonous fog above their heads. It could only affect everyone's perception, but it wouldn't kill them. This was a blessing in disguise. Otherwise, even if they knew that there was an infant ginseng in this place, they had to quickly retreat. No matter how good the infant ginseng was, they had to be alive to obtain it. If they continued to stay here, they would only become fertilizer for the infant ginseng. Ah! There is no way forward! Feng Hongyu suddenly exclaimed in front of them. She was following Chu Bubi at the front, and the others were following behind them. Only she and Chu Bubi knew the situation in front of them the best. What? Guo Dengtao and Wang Feng were shocked and quickly went forward to check the situation. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and followed. The 6 of them stood in a circle and looked at the path that had completely disappeared. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do. Although the fog had become thicker and their feet had become blurry, they could still see the outline of the path. But now, even the basic outline was gone. There were only dense bushes and bushes in front of them. It seemed that this was the end of the path. Brother Chu, could it be that we've gone the wrong way? Guo Dengtao couldn't help but ask. When a path suddenly came to an end, a normal person's first reaction would be to get lost. After all, this place was covered in fog, and visibility was very limited. It was normal to get lost. No, I've been referring to the map and compass. The direction is definitely correct. Everyone doesn't need to panic. This path was passed down by my ancestors. I don't know how many years it has been since someone used it. It's normal for the path to disappear, said Chu Bubi calmly. R1152. Chapter 4256. Everyone seemed to be infected by Chu Bubi's calmness and nodded. They were no longer as panicked as before. Then what do we do next? Guo Dengtao asked. Naturally, we will continue forward. We have already reached this step, and we can only watch helplessly as the nascent ginseng is right in front of us. We can't let such a small obstacle go to waste, Chu Bubi said lightly. Wang Feng couldn't help but nervously ask. But the fog is so thick, and there are no small paths. We have no idea what's going on ahead. Guo Dengtao and the others nodded in agreement. Lin Yi had also tried earlier, and found that this place was very strange. Not only was the fog too thick, but he couldn't see much with his eyes. Even with his divine sense, he couldn't sense what was going on ahead. Under normal circumstances, although they couldn't see it with their eyes, they could still sense it with their divine sense. If even divine sense was blocked, then this place was definitely strange. Perhaps there was some formation, or perhaps this place was naturally like this. For example, there was a magnetic field that could also affect divine sense. No matter which one it was, it meant that this place was no small matter and couldn't be entered easily. Although we can't completely see what's going on ahead, after walking for so long, we're already familiar with this place, so there's no need to worry too much. Chu Bubi comforted everyone. For us, the biggest threat in Lufeng Forest is spirit beasts. However, this place is a graveyard for spirit beasts. Other than spirit beasts that are about to die, other spirit beasts won't come here. Otherwise, we would have encountered them long ago. What do you guys think? Brother Chu's words make sense. Guo Dengtao and the others nodded. Other than those strange and disgusting things, there were no living spirit beasts. Furthermore, there was no miasma, so it naturally wasn't a threat to them. Along the way, everyone's trust in Chu Bubi had gradually accumulated to the point of blindness. His words could be said to be unquestionable, and his words were indeed reasonable and convincing. So, even if we can't see what's going on ahead, we don't need to scare ourselves. As long as we're careful, we won't fail at the last moment. Chu Bubi continued to explain with a calm expression. I've encountered this situation in other places before. I also couldn't see the road clearly, and I couldn't even sense it with my divine sense. However, in the end, there wasn't any danger. It was just like a ghost hitting a wall. Ghost hits wall? Everyone could not help but look at each other. Even Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. This saying was widely spread among the people and was often mentioned in the cultivation world. In the end, it could be concluded that it was nothing more than a natural maze or a formation. But no matter which one it was, there wasn't any actual danger. It was just that they couldn't find the exit and were running around in circles. It was purely a waste of time. So when they heard Chububi's words, everyone immediately felt relieved. However, although they all breathed a sigh of relief, no one dared to walk forward rashly. They all looked at each other, and no one was willing to take the lead. Even if there was nothing to be afraid of, what if this wasn't? What if there was some kind of death trap? There was a momentary stalemate. Everyone's eyes finally fell on Chububi. Their meaning was obvious. Chububi was the one leading the way. At this juncture, naturally, Chububi should be the one taking the lead. After all, he was the leader. However, for some reason, Chububi did not continue to take the lead this time. He looked around at everyone and said in a deep voice, "It's just a ghost hitting a wall. There's nothing to be afraid of. Now, everyone will line up in order. Taozi will take the lead in front, and I will hold the rear. What do you think?" This? Guadangtao suddenly hesitated. He had no objection to others not taking the lead, but he was unlucky. He could not help but twitch his mouth. "Brother Chu, it's not that I don't want to, but I don't know the way. I've never been to this place, and I'm not familiar with your family's map. Even if I follow the map, it's easy to get lost. Not to mention, I can't even see the road in front. That's okay. I will hold the rear and give you directions at any time. That way, there won't be any mistakes," Chububi said with certainty. Then, okay. At this point, Guadangtao could not refuse anymore, so he had to bite the bullet and take the lead. Everyone lined up in a straight line, with Guadangtao in the lead and Wang Feng following closely behind, just a step behind Guadangtao. Behind them were Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, and finally Feng Hongyu and Chububi, who was responsible for holding the rear. Guadangtao was very careful, every step he took trembling with fear, as if he was walking on thin ice for fear of falling into some fatal trap. However, Chububi would give out orders every few steps. Just like that, everyone walked through the fog for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, but they didn't encounter any accidents or dangers. Lin Yi turned his head and looked at the front and back. Although they were only a step apart, in this fog, even if it was just a small distance, the figures had become a little blurred. It could be seen how terrible the visibility was. However, Lin Yi was more puzzled at the moment, and it was because of Chububi's deliberate arrangement. Everyone knew that in this situation, it was clearly the most appropriate for him to be the first. Not only was it because he was the most familiar with the map and it was not easy to get lost, but it was also because he was a master in the late gold core stage, and he was the strongest among them. Indeed, a strong person was needed to hold the rear, but in terms of the degree of danger and challenge, it was obvious that the person walking in the front was higher. If there was any danger, he would be able to respond faster. With the shrewdness shown by Chububi, it was impossible for him not to understand this kind of thing, but he still had to stay at the back. Lin Yi thought about it, and there were only two possibilities. Either he felt that this place was dangerous, so he let Guadangtao and a few others walk in front as cannon fodder. Even if there was an accident, he could escape in time. Or, he had ulterior motives and had other intentions, but it was unknown what kind of bad intentions it was. The moonlight was hazy, and the visibility was only a step away from the heavy fog. There was also an unknown existence that was looming in the fog. It was like a ghost fire, but it did not feel like a ghost fire, but more like a ghost shadow. It formed an extremely strange and evil picture. Everyone did not dare to breathe. Listening to the command of Chububi, one by one, they lined up in the fog. If it was an ordinary person, seeing the ghost shadows flashing around them from time to time, their heart would probably jump out. Fortunately, everyone was a master in the gold core stage, and their minds were far more tenacious than ordinary people. Some nervousness and fear were inevitable, but it did not affect their actions. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4257. In their eyes, there was nothing to be afraid of, even if there were some legendary ghosts and monsters. Ghosts were just a form of spirit. No matter how powerful they were far less powerful than cultivators. Everyone secretly cheered themselves on. After walking for half an hour without any accidents, they could not help but feel a lot more at ease. Their footsteps were no longer as timid as before. However, after a while, Linny suddenly felt that something was wrong. The jade pendant began to give a faint warning. His heart suddenly quivered. "There's a problem. Xiao Tao!" Linny subconsciously tightened his grip on Huang Xiaotao's hand. At the same time, he turned his head and looked around. In the end, he found that apart from Huang Xiaotao, no one else had disappeared. Previously, no matter how thick the fog was, because they were only 1 or 2 steps away from each other, they could still see a vague shadow. However, there was not even a shadow now. Gua Dangtao and Wang Feng, who were walking in front, and Chu Bubi and Feng Hongyu, who were walking behind, had suddenly disappeared. Sure enough, there was a problem. Linny was shocked. At the same time, he could not help but feel lucky. Fortunately, he had been holding Huang Xiaotao. Otherwise, Huang Xiaotao might have disappeared with them. What's going on? Why did the others disappear? Huang Xiaotao finally realized that something was wrong. Her voice was trembling. After all, she was a girl. In such a strange environment, she was very nervous. "Don't act rashly. Let's observe the situation first," Linny said in a low voice. At the same time, he turned his head and looked around. He tried to release his divine sense. However, it was the same as before. His divine sense, which had worked many times outside, was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no reaction at all. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly sounded not far behind. It was Chu Bubi, who had disappeared. "This is the ghost fog array. We can't stay here for long. Everyone, rush forward. As long as we keep rushing forward, we will be able to pass." As soon as the voice fell, there were a few swishing sounds. It was clear that someone was rushing forward quickly. Hearing this, Huang Xiaotao subconsciously rushed forward. However, before she could take a step, she was pulled back by Linny. "Xiaotao, calm down!" Linny shouted in a low voice. Although this sound was not loud, it was like a morning bell. It struck directly at Huang Xiaotao's heart, causing her body to suddenly tremble. After that, she abruptly woke up with a start and had an astonished expression. What happened to me just now?" Huang Xiaotao couldn't help but feel scared. Just now, Chu Bubi's voice seemed to have some kind of bewitching magic that made her lose her mind. That was why she subconsciously obeyed the other party's orders. If Linny hadn't pulled her back in time, who knew where she would have gone by now? "You must have been bewitched just now. This Chu Bubi fellow is really strange." Linny vigilantly observed his surroundings and cautiously said. At this moment, he finally understood Chu Bubi's intentions. Along the way, everyone had been following him, thus establishing enough trust. At the same time, they subconsciously let down their guard. She began to follow his orders blindly. Especially after entering the fog, almost every step was taken according to Chu Bubi's instructions, which further strengthened this subconscious habit. In addition, this person's voice just now clearly had the effect of bewitching people's minds, which made everyone subconsciously follow his orders. This was a trap set from the beginning. From the moment they agreed to join the group, everyone had actually fallen into Chu Bubi's rhythm of hypnosis. Chu Bubi, this person's mind was actually deep to this extent. Fortunately, Linny had been suspicious of him from beginning to end. He had been paying attention to all kinds of strange things, so he didn't take the bait as easily as the others. Moreover, with his tenacious mind, how could he be bewitched by an ordinary person? Although Linny heard that something was wrong, he couldn't see the situation clearly in this place, so he didn't dare to act rashly. At this moment, he couldn't care about the others and could only take care of Huang Xiaotao. Bewitching? No wonder it seemed to be involuntary just now, and my body didn't listen to me. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Huang Xiaotao was suddenly shocked. At the same time, she secretly rejoiced that she had Lin Yi by her side. She couldn't help but ask nervously, "Then what should we do now? I can't see the situation clearly, so I'll have to stay here for a while," Lin Yi said as he strained his ears to listen in on their surroundings. In this situation, his eyes and divine sense were useless. Only his ears were slightly better. If there was any movement around, he could at least hear some sounds. Huang Xiaotao nodded with lingering fear. She held Lin Yi's hand tightly with one hand, and at the same time, like Lin Yi, she carefully watched everything around them. The two of them waited quietly for a moment, but there was no movement around them at all. In Lin Yi's view, no matter what tricks Chu Bubi played, Gui Dengtao and Wang Feng were real masters of the gold core realm. Even if they fell into any tricks, there should be a little room for them to struggle. It wouldn't be so quiet and directly killed, right? Of course, if he thought about it in an extreme way, Chu Bubi had spent so much effort to bring everyone here. With his shrewdness, he should not leave any room for them to turn the tables. It was not impossible for Gui Dengtao and the others to disappear silently. But the problem was, Chu Bubi had spent so much effort to bring people who had nothing to do with him to such a place, and then killed them. What was the purpose of this? Lin Yi could not figure out this problem for a while, but he could faintly feel that this matter should be related to the infant ginseng. After all, the medicinal fragrance of the infant ginseng could not be faked, but it was hard to say what the specific relationship was. Have they gone far away? Or... Huang Xiaotao held Lin Yi's hand tightly, and did not dare to continue halfway through her words. Because at this moment, she could still see ghosts flashing around from the corner of her eyes from time to time. If Gui Dengtao and the others did not have an accident, Chu Bubi would definitely have countermeasures when he found that the two of them did not follow. Even if he did not come back to look for them personally, he should find a way to send a signal or something. But now, there was no movement at all in front of them. If Lin Yi's guess was right, and Chu Bubi really had ulterior motives, Gui Dengtao and the others were most likely to be in danger. Thinking of this, Huang Xiaotao could not help but have goosebumps. If Lin Yi did not hold her back just now, she would definitely die together with them. I don't know. For now, we can only take one step at a time, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. He was also uncertain in his heart, and could only wait and see for the time being. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4258. There were all kinds of unknowns around, and they could all be fatal dangers. The only thing that made Lin Yi feel at ease was that at this moment, the jade pendant was no longer warning. Not to mention Chu Bubi, at least one thing was certain, it was safe for the time being. However, temporary safety did not mean that it would always be safe. On the one hand, Lin Yi didn't want to stay in the same place for too long. On the other hand, he wanted to know what Chu Bubi was doing. So, he held Huang Xiaotao tightly and walked forward carefully. However, after a few steps, the jade pendant began to warn again. The further they went, the more intense the warning became. Lin Yi was finally sure that this place was definitely not ordinary, and there was a 100% problem ahead. After understanding this, Lin Yi stopped moving forward. He directly took Huang Xiaotao and stopped again. Are we not going? Huang Xiaotao turned to look at Lin Yi in surprise. Yes, we're not going. Lin Yi nodded. He was not a fool. Knowing that there was a dragon's pool and a tiger's den ahead, he still wanted to take Huang Xiaotao. It was not called being bold, but having a hole in his brain. Then we... Huang Xiaotao looked at the fog around them, and the ghostly shadows flashed from time to time. She couldn't help but shrink her neck. It's okay. We'll stay here. There is no danger. Lin Yi smiled comfortingly. Staying in the same place could maximize their vigilance. Plus, the jade pendant could warn them in advance, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Okay. Huang Xiaotao nodded obediently. Although she was still nervous, she would do whatever Lin Yi said. Time passed by bit. In the blink of an eye, the sky had begun to brighten, indicating that a whole night had passed. However, the fog did not dissipate because of this. Compared to the night, the visibility was slightly better, but it was very limited. What surprised Lin Yi was, he and Huang Xiaotao stayed here for a whole night, but they did not encounter any situation. There was no danger, but there was no news of those people in front. Chu Bubi, Guodang Tao, and the others seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Although Lin Yi was puzzled, he was not in a hurry. As an assassin, he did not lack patience. Huang Xiaotao, who was with him, was a girl. Although he was a little afraid of this strange and evil environment, he had spent the past few years completing trial missions, so his patience was naturally top-notch. Just like that, the two of them waited in the same place for an entire night, but they didn't show any signs of impatience. After another 6 to 8 hours, they estimated that it should be noon. "Lin Yi, why don't we leave?" Huang Xiaotao looked at Lin Yi anxiously. It was not that she had run out of patience, but this place was simply too horrifying. From time to time, he would see a ghostly shadow flashing by, but he couldn't figure out what it was. The more he thought about it, the more numb his scalp became. "Let's wait a little longer." Lin Yi held Huang Xiaotao in his arms to comfort her. Since things had developed to this point, turning around and leaving was indeed the safest thing to do. After all, they had the route map that Chu Bubi had given them, and they had already walked it once. It shouldn't be a problem for them to return the way they came. However, Lin Yi didn't want to give up just like that. If he didn't smell the medicinal fragrance of the infant ginseng, then it would be fine. But now, he was sure that there must be infant ginseng around. Turning around and leaving because of an unknown threat, if it was anyone else, they would not be willing. Even if they successfully escaped, they would definitely regret it when the time came. Instead of regretting, it was better to wait and see. Of course, even if he was unwilling to leave just like that, Lin Yi couldn't bring Huang Xiaotao to take risks. He still had a sense of propriety. Oh. Huang Xiaotao didn't say anything else. She just leaned against Lin Yi and continued to wait quietly. In the blink of an eye, another 8 to 10 hours had passed. The sky had turned dark again, and the surroundings became gloomy and ghostly again. However, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao still didn't receive any news. There was no news from the people in front of them from beginning to end. This time, even the originally calm Lin Yi couldn't help but feel doubtful. Could it really be the ghost fog array that Chu Bubi mentioned? Although it was indeed dangerous, it would be fine as long as they rushed over. Could it be that Chu Bubi, Guodang Tao, and the others had left through other routes after obtaining the nascent ginseng? His mind was full of question marks, which made Lin Yi lose confidence in his original judgment. Lin Yi even felt that if he continued to wait here, he might not see anything even after a few more days. Although it was safe for now, who knew what would appear in this place after a long time? They had already waited for a day and a night. If they continued to wait, it would probably be a waste of time. After thinking about it, Lin Yi finally made up his mind to bring Huang Xiaotao back first. However, just as he was about to speak to Huang Xiaotao, there was suddenly the sound of messy footsteps and heavy breathing coming from not far in front of the fog. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao's hearts suddenly tightened. The two of them looked at each other and quickly mobilized the qi in their bodies. They were fully alert while trying to sense the situation in front of them. Amidst the thick fog, not far ahead, a figure appeared indistinctly. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were shocked at the same time. Although it was only a general outline, they had been following this person for the past few days. The person in the fog in front of them was Chu Bubi, who had disappeared for a whole day and night. At this moment, Chu Bubi was madly running in the direction of Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. It seemed that there was something chasing him from behind. He was a late-stage Golden Core practitioner, and yet he was being chased to the point where his steps were messed up. Even if they couldn't see his face clearly, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao could clearly feel his panic at this moment. It was simply unimaginable. Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly wonder who was behind Chu Bubi. Chu Bubi didn't look like a weak person. Judging from his aura, even if he was in the late Gold Core stage, he wouldn't be weak. To be able to make him so embarrassed, Could it be a powerful existence in the nascent soul stage? While Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were in a daze, they heard Chu Bubi running in a panic and seemed to be very surprised and unwilling. He muttered to himself in disbelief. Phew! It shouldn't be! This ginseng clearly only needs to be sacrificed with the golden cores of 5 masters in the gold core realm, and it will no longer have any offensive power. This is what Grandpa said himself. It can't be wrong! The ghost talisman devils that I controlled should have already led them over. Why are they still? Xie! The voice stopped abruptly here. An extremely shrill scream was heard. Then, the figure that was getting closer and closer to Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao was hit by some powerful evil attack and turned into a mist of blood. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4259. Chu Bubi, the scheming late-stage gold core master, was directly obliterated in front of the eyes of Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. Lin Yi couldn't help but be flabbergasted when he witnessed this unbelievable scene with his own eyes. Huang Xiaotao, who was beside him, was even more shocked by this extremely bloody scene, and she cried out involuntarily. 3W. At this time, Lin Yi suddenly woke up, but it was too late. Huang Xiaotao's scream attracted the thing that was chasing Chu Bubi. Lin Yi hurriedly stood in front of Huang Xiaotao. The unknown existence in front of him carried an indescribable but incomparably powerful aura. It swept towards the two of them at an extremely fast speed. Even the surrounding layers of fog seemed to take the initiative to clear the way for it. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched wildly. When the existence in front of him was within 10 feet, he could see its appearance clearly. It was actually a little golden person. At this time, even Lin Yi finally couldn't stay calm. What the hell is this? An existence that could kill Chu Bubi so effortlessly. No matter how he looked at it, it had to be a powerful monster. Lin Yi had even thought that it was some powerful spirit beast of the nascent soul stage, but the one in front of him was just a pocket-sized golden human. It didn't seem powerful at all. Xiaotao beat him! Although he had doubts in his heart, Lin Yi did not dare to neglect. He immediately asked Huang Xiaotao to cooperate with him, and the frenzied 8 trigrams palm strike was fully launched. If it wasn't for Chu Bubi's example, he might have really let his guard down. Now that the bloody example was right in front of him, Lin Yi had to be tired of living if he still underestimated the golden dwarf. What's more, this golden person came aggressively. Wherever it passed, even the thick fog around it took the initiative to open the way for it. If he couldn't even see this extraordinary thing, Lin Yi would not be able to live to this day. Boom! After such a long period of practice, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao's teamwork was already very good. In the blink of an eye, 2 palms of raging fire 8 trigrams struck the golden dwarf's body at the same time. The golden dwarf that was charging towards the two of them didn't even have the time to attack before it was sent flying by Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. It fell to the ground after flying a few hundred feet and twitched a few times. Only then did he finally stop moving. However, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao did not let their guard down because of this. After all, this thing was a powerful existence that could kill Chu Bubi. With the power of the two's frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm attack, they could seriously injure it, but they might not be able to kill it directly. What if it was faking its death? Lin Yi gave Huang Xiaotao a look, and Huang Xiaotao nodded knowingly. The two of them joined forces to be on guard. Step by step, he approached the little golden person in the distance. During this process, what made the two extremely surprised was that the thick fog around them gradually thinned, and the visibility became much better. Their divine senses also began to return to normal, and the fog gradually dissipated. Lin Yi was even more surprised. Just now, he felt that the origin of the golden dwarf seemed to have something to do with the fog. Now, this speculation was even more confirmed. This golden dwarf could actually control such a troublesome fog. What kind of divine being was it? Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao carefully stepped forward and found that the golden dwarf seemed to have been killed and could no longer move. However, before the two of them could breathe a sigh of relief, the golden dwarf's corpse suddenly moved. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were shocked at the same time, and subconsciously wanted to add another frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm attack. However, when they saw the changes in the golden dwarf's body, the two of them were dumbfounded on the spot. Is this the legendary fairy? Huang Xiaotao was stunned for a long time, and after a long time, she weakly squeezed out a sentence. She really couldn't think of any other word to describe the scene in front of her other than fairy. Linny also choked for a long time. Right before their eyes, in just a short moment, the golden dwarf's corpse had actually shrunk and deformed. It wasn't a fake death, nor was it a corpse that had suddenly changed its appearance. Previously it was still a miniature, pocket-sized golden dwarf, but all of a sudden, it no longer looked like a human. Its limbs had turned into roots, and its head and body didn't look human at all. Revealing its original form after death, just from this point alone, it really wasn't much different from the fairy in the legends. It was said that once a spirit beast reached a certain realm, it could transform into a human form. Wasn't this exactly the case? The two of them looked at each other. When Huang Xiaotao thought about these strange things, she didn't dare to look at it anymore. However, after staring at it for a while, a thought suddenly flashed in Lin Yi's mind, and he hurriedly picked it up. Ah! Huang Xiaotao was startled and hurriedly took 2 steps back, but she was held back by Lin Yi's hand. Don't be afraid, Xiaotao, we have a big harvest this time. Quickly come and take a look. Lin Yi carefully looked at the thing in his hand, and the excitement on his face was obvious. Harvest! Harvest? Huang Xiaotao was stunned, and only then did she dare to look at the thing again. After looking at it carefully, she suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but ask in surprise and doubt. You mean? That's right, this is the target of our trip, the nascent ginseng, Lin Yi said excitedly. In fact, from the moment the golden dwarf appeared, he had felt suspicious. This was because the unique medicinal fragrance of the nascent ginseng was obviously much stronger than before. However, at that time, his focus was on the golden dwarf's strength and the changes in the surrounding fog, so he didn't have time to carefully consider this point. He didn't expect that this thing was actually the nascent ginseng. This thing is really the nascent ginseng? Huang Xiaotao's first reaction was not surprise, but her expression became extremely strange. In her past knowledge and imagination, there was only one way for treasures such as elixirs to exist, and that was to grow from the ground. However, the thing in front of her, although it looked like an elixir, when it was alive, not only could it run and jump, but it could even force Chububi, a master in the late stage of the gold core realm, into a mess and easily kill him. Was this also an elixir? This time, Huang Xiaotao's understanding was subverted. She stared at the thing in Lin Yi's hand and was speechless for a long time. In fact, if he hadn't personally refined the nascent ginseng into a gathering nascent golden pill, Lin Yi wouldn't believe that this thing was really the nascent ginseng. Yes, so our trip was not in vain. After Lin Yi confirmed it again and again, he nodded excitedly. Previously, the will of heaven only gave him a thumb-sized piece of nascent ginseng, and he was able to successfully refine a gathering nascent golden pill. Now, he had a whole plant in his hand. Readers of mobile reading, please vote and read monthly to support Old You. Readers of Chidian website can also vote for me. Readers of QQ reading, please leave a message to support me. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4260. If they were all used to refine golden elixirs of gathering nascent soul, how many elixirs would there be? Just thinking about it was enough to make one speechless with excitement. With the nascent ginseng in his hand, even if he didn't do anything else in this trip to the South Island, he would already have a great harvest and a bountiful bowl. Life was really unpredictable. It was really a wise move to come to Lufeng Forest this time. Great! Huang Xiaotao digested it for a long time and finally accepted the reality that this thing was nascent ginseng. She was finally happy. However, thinking of the situation just now, she immediately became gloomy and said, It's a pity that Chu Bubi and Guodang Tao, although they had only known each other for a few days and didn't communicate much with each other, in Huang Xiaotao's view, after all, these people could be regarded as her teammates. They all came here to take risks for the nascent ginseng. As a result, they accidentally got the nascent ginseng, but things had changed. Chu Bubi died tragically in front of them. As for Guo Dengtao, Wang Feng, and Feng Hongyu, although they didn't see it with their own eyes, even Chu Bubi, who was the strongest among them, ended up like this. Needless to say, they must be dead. After so many years, Huang Xiaotao had already adapted to the rhythm of the trial task and experienced the tragic death of her teammates many times. If it were others, they might have already become numb, but as a girl who was soft on the outside and tough on the inside, she might never turn a blind eye to it. Even though they had only known each other for a short period of time and did not have much of a relationship with each other, Huang Xiaotao still saw them as teammates from the bottom of her heart. She felt sorrow for their tragic deaths from the bottom of her heart, and she did not secretly rejoice because of the competition for benefits between them. It's really a pity for Guo Dengtao and Wang Feng. Lin Yi patted Huang Xiaotao's shoulder to comfort her, then changed his tone and said, "But Chu Bubi deserved to die." "Ah? Why do you say that?" Huang Xiaotao was stunned, just like the others. Along the way, she felt that Chu Bubi was actually quite steady and reliable. "Xiaotao, have you forgotten what he just said before he died?" Lin Yi shook his head and said. "What he said before he died?" Huang Xiaotao thought for a moment and said in confusion. "I think it was about 5 golden core stage experts offering sacrifices or something, that's right. It's fine if Guo Dengtao and the others are acquainted with him. However, the two of us are total strangers to him. Regarding such an important secret like the infant ginseng, a normal person wouldn't share it, right?" Lin Yi smiled coldly and said. "But not only did he do that, he even asked us to join him. Xiaotao, don't you think it's very strange? There is no such thing as a free lunch. There is no such thing in the cultivation world. Now that you mention it, it is indeed very strange." Only then did Huang Xiaotao realize that she had been letting Lin Yi make all the decisions. She didn't think too much about it before, but now that he mentioned it, she immediately came to a realization. So, the 5 gold core stage priests that he mentioned before his death, it is very obvious which 5 people he was referring to. Lin Yi said in a deep voice. "Besides Chu Bubi himself, you, me, Guo Dengtao, Wang Feng, and Feng Hongyu are just enough to gather 5 gold core stage experts. According to what he said just now, as long as the 5 of us are sacrificed, the infant ginseng will not have any attack power. At that time, he can enjoy it alone. His evil intentions are really bad. That's too vicious. In that case, Guo Dengtao and the others were all killed by him." Huang Xiaotao was shocked. Thinking about it carefully, it was really like this. She suddenly broke into a cold sweat. She secretly rejoiced that Lin Yi's judgment was correct. If it wasn't for Lin Yi pulling her in time, she would have become the opponent's stepping stone. With Chu Bubi's shrewdness, if it was anyone else instead of Lin Yi, he would be able to fool them. At that time, the 5 gold core stage masters would become his pawns and tools, and he would quietly trick them into sacrificing the infant ginseng. According to the attack power shown by the infant ginseng before, ordinary gold core stage experts would only be courting death if they went up. Once the 5 gold core stage experts died, no one would be able to compete with Chu Bubi. At the same time, the infant ginseng would lose its attack power and become a treasure that could be easily obtained. This was really killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Chu Bubi was a schemer. From the beginning to the end, he made a big trap. He used the infant ginseng as bait and waited for everyone to drill into it. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that Lin Yi would be so wary of him. He and Huang Xiaotao didn't rush over at all, and in the end, they were killed by the infant ginseng. He spent so much effort, but in the end, it ended up benefiting Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. If Chu Bubi knew about this, he would probably die with regrets. From the beginning, I saw that there was a problem with Chu Bubi, but I didn't expect this person to be so insidious. For the infant ginseng, he didn't hesitate to use the lives of the 5 of us to pave the way. His heart is really insidious. Lin Yi shook his head and sighed. But Feng Hongyu is his Tao companion. How can this person be so cruel? Huang Xiaotao still felt that it was a little hard to believe. In front of the infant ginseng, he can even kill his own father and brother, let alone a Tao companion. Chu Bubi is an ambitious person. His thoughts are different from us. Lin Yi paused and then said with some regret, "It's a pity for Guodang Tao and Wang Feng. Although I'm not familiar with them, I can see that they aren't insidious people. It's just that they met a teammate like Chu Bubi and died." Hearing this, Huang Xiaotao also lowered her head sadly. She survived because of Lin Yi, but no one could save Guodang Tao and Wang Feng. The cultivation world was cruel. Lin Yi couldn't care about everyone's life and death. The only thing he could do was to take care of the people around him. As for the others, they could only pray for their own good luck. However, it requires the sacrifice of 5 golden core stage experts to make it lose its aggressiveness. This infant ginseng is worthy of being called the best among the elixirs. Seeing Huang Xiaotao's heavy mood, Lin Yi changed the topic and said while weighing the infant ginseng in his hand, "Yes, no wonder the infant ginseng can't even be heard of in the market. It's already so rare and difficult to find, but it also requires the sacrifice of 5 golden core stage experts. The difficulty is really unimaginable. If picking ginseng is so difficult every time, how many people will die?" Huang Xiaotao's attention was indeed diverted. She covered her mouth in surprise. Chapter 42-61. With the performance of the infant ginseng just now, for a master of the gold core stage, even a master of the peak of the gold core stage, it would be difficult to kill it, right? Is the strength of the infant ginseng already comparable to a master of the nascent soul stage? Huang Xiaotao blinked her eyes. After all, like her and Lin Yi, 2 masters of the early stage of the gold core stage, together, could be comparable to the existence of a master of the nascent soul stage. In the whole world, there was probably only one master of the gold core stage. It was impossible for other masters of the gold core stage to have such a heaven-defying method. Comparable to the nascent soul stage? That shouldn't be the case. I guess it is only at the peak of the gold core stage. Lin Yi thought about it and said, "If the infant ginseng was comparable to a master of the nascent soul stage, he and Huang Xiaotao's frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm strike could at most severely injure it, and it would be impossible to kill it so easily. But even so, this was already very exaggerated. It should be known that many people who would try their best to find the infant ginseng were masters of the gold core stage. In order to prepare to condense the nascent soul, they still needed a golden pill of gathering nascent soul. The strength of the peak of the gold core stage, coupled with the mist that isolated divine sense, was enough to make them suffer a lot." As the two were talking, Lin Yi suddenly realized that the mist around him was dispersing faster and faster after he got the baby ginseng. At this rate, it wouldn't take more than half an incense stick of time for it to completely disappear. "Not good, it's not good to stay here for a long time. If we stay for a long time, we may attract trouble. We have to leave quickly." Lin Yi suddenly became vigilant and made a prompt decision. He quickly put the infant ginseng into the jade pendant, and at the same time, he took Huang Xiaotao's hand and prepared to leave. Now they could confirm one thing: the mist was the baby ginseng's protective umbrella. Now that the baby ginseng was dead, the mist dissipated automatically. This wasn't a good thing for the two who had obtained the treasure. From a certain perspective, the mist could protect the baby ginseng, and at the same time, it could protect the two of them. Now the mist had dissipated. Moreover, the medicinal fragrance of the nascent ginseng was so heavy that if any cultivators were to pass by, they would likely be attracted over. If they looked over, they would be able to see what was going on with a single glance. An ordinary man's wealth would become his own ruin. "Yes." Huang Xiaotao nodded repeatedly, not daring to be negligent. She had been doing trial missions for so many years, so she was very clear about these things. She immediately followed Lin Yi and left. However, before the two of them could take more than a few steps, they saw something behind them. Suddenly, a bone-chilling, strange laughter rang out, and all the carrion-eating crows within a radius of several dozen kilometers instantly scattered in fright. It was truly hair-raising. Lin Yi was instantly shocked, and he hurriedly protected Huang Xiaotao behind him, while he couldn't help but feel regretful in his heart. Earlier, he'd unexpectedly obtained the nascent ginseng, and he'd become slightly complacent in the end. He would have left long ago after taking the things. Why would he stay with Huang Xiaotao in this troublesome place? However, other than being overly excited, the fog had not completely dissipated. If it were someone else, they probably wouldn't be in such a hurry to leave. Lin Yi's reaction could only be considered normal. At most, he was a little careless. It was accompanied by a creepy laughter. A figure suddenly descended from the sky. Lin Yi followed the voice and looked up. He could not help but feel a chill in his heart. This person had actually descended from the sky from a height of several dozen zhang. The gray clothes on his body seemed to be specially made. As he stretched out his limbs, they looked like bat wings. He could glide in the air, and he could also change his direction flexibly to quickly shuttle through the dense forest. Ah! Seeing this, Huang Xiaotao cried out in alarm. At first glance, this person looked like a huge gray-skinned bat. She had just seen the nascent ginseng that had transformed into a small golden person. She had thought that this person wasn't a human, but a spirit beast that had transformed into a human form. Lin Yi was also secretly shocked. Of course, what shocked him wasn't whether this person was a human or a beast, but that the other party had actually swooped down from a height of several dozen zhang. Could it be that he wasn't afraid of the layer of miasma above his head? After all, the height of the miasma was only a few dozen zhang. Lin Yi was sure that this person was definitely a human. However, it didn't make sense for a human cultivator to be able to ignore the miasma. Even if he wasn't afraid of being poisoned, the effect of the miasma on one's senses was no less than that of the fog. To be able to clearly sense Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao in the miasma, how terrifying was this person's strength? Before they could react, the gray-clothed person whistled and landed not far away from the two of them. Only then did the two of them see his appearance clearly. It was a middle-aged man with a naturally sinister face. This person's most prominent characteristic was his tall hooked nose. His pair of small but focused eyes were accompanied by a sinister smile. He was obviously a human cultivator, but standing in front of them, he gave off a dangerous aura like that of a wild beast. It unconsciously caused their hair to stand on end and their hearts to tremble. Lin Yi's heart immediately sank. It wasn't because of this person's appearance, but because he couldn't see through his opponent's strength. This meant that this person was at least of the original infant stage. With a great enemy in front of them, it was impossible to escape at this time. Ignoring the fact that this person was strong, it could be seen from the way he appeared that this person was a speed type. It was impossible for Lin Yi to escape with Huang Xiaotao. Moreover, even if they could escape, with such a close distance, Lin Yi wouldn't dare to leave his back to an original infant stage cultivator. Not only was this extremely unwise, it was also a taboo in Jianghu. It was no different from courting death. Haha, it really is the aura of the infant ginseng. This trip wasn't in vain after all. The gray-clothed man sniffed the air and a pair of gloomy eyes fell on Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. He grinned and said, "It seems that the infant ginseng is in your hands. Hee, you let these ants die first, and then you reap the benefits. You guys sure are scheming. Who are you?" Hearing this, Lin Yi's heart sank even more. Since the opponent was able to say this, it meant that he had already noticed them. It was just that the opponent's strength was far stronger than theirs. Therefore, Lin Yi and Chu Bubi didn't notice him at all. Thinking about this, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel scared. At the same time, he roughly understood the reason why this person waited until now to make a move. Aside from wanting to reap the benefits, the other reason should be because of the fog. It was obvious that the fog that was used to hide the infant ginseng was something the gray-clothed man couldn't see through. Otherwise, he would have taken the infant ginseng before the fog dissipated. He wouldn't have waited until now to ask for it. Chapter 4262. When Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao retreated, he was also forced to retreat. Just from the surface, it seemed like they were evenly matched. Two golden core stage ants were able to unleash such a powerful martial skill when they joined hands. It was comparable to the full power of a golden core stage master. Although the man in gray had the strength of a nascent soul stage master, he was too careless and underestimated his opponent. That was why he was in such a sorry state. He was forced into a tie by two golden core stage juniors. Even if it was only one move, it was still embarrassing enough. The man in gray's face immediately turned gloomy. The blood in his body surged. Only now did he realize that he was caught off guard and had suffered a small injury. He was really in a sorry state. Humph, you have some skills. Two mere golden core stage beginners were able to withstand my two palms. You too should be proud. The man in gray didn't attack again. Instead, he stood 100 feet away and sneered. It's a pity that the both of you can only stop here. A gold core stage expert who can survive after receiving my origin-shattering palm has never appeared in this world. Although the both of you are worthy of praise, it's a pity that you still can't escape death. Ha ha! Oh? You're so confident? Lin Yi was still sitting on the ground. His and Huang Xiaotao's faces didn't look good. However, after hearing the man in gray's words, he still raised his eyebrows and asked calmly. Confident? Humph, what kind of confidence is this? It's just common sense. I can't deny that the power of your joint palm technique is indeed praiseworthy. But it's a pity that it's still very shallow. It's just a low-level palm technique that can only strike randomly. The man in gray sneered confidently. Even if you can withstand my shattering energy palm on the surface, how can trash like you resist the damage to the primordial spirit? Your primordial spirit has obviously suffered heavy injuries, but you still insist on acting in front of me. I want to see how long you can last. Ha ha! Primordial spirit has suffered heavy injuries? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He looked at the man in gray like he was looking at an idiot. There should be a limit to deceiving others and yourself, right? Which eye of yours can see that? Our primordial spirits are heavily injured? Without waiting for the other party to reply, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao had already stood up hand in hand. Both of them had relaxed expressions. Not to mention injuries to their primordial spirits, they didn't even seem to have suffered any ordinary physical injuries. It was as if they were completely fine. How is this possible? The man in gray was dumbfounded and couldn't even speak properly. He had absolute confidence in his essence-shattering palm. Even if he was careless, and did not use his full strength to attack, he could at least injure his opponent's essence spirit. How could he be completely fine? Was there something wrong with his eyes? Unbeknownst to him, ordinary Aurus core stage experts were indeed unable to deal with his aura-shattering palm. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were also unable to deal with it. Unfortunately, Lin Yi still had an invisible helper called the ghost thing. In terms of controlling one's primordial spirit, if that thing claimed to be number 2 in the world, no one would dare to claim to be number 1 in the world. This was a true grandmaster, even if the other party was an original infant stage expert. In this aspect, how could he be compared to the ghost thing? The little bit of divine sense attack that the man in gray had mixed in with the aura-shattering palm was silently dissolved by the ghost thing. Its method was brilliant and mysterious. He couldn't detect it at all. The truth is right in front of you. Do you still think it's impossible? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He gave Huang Xiaotao a look and didn't immediately make a move. He said indifferently, Do you really think that just because the two of us have ordinary strength, you can really defeat us? Aren't you a little too confident? Lin Yi's calm performance caused the man in gray to immediately panic. The gray-clothed man, who was already bewildered, immediately panicked. His gaze towards Lin Yi and the girl finally changed from the arrogance and disdain he had before to a much more serious one. He could see that Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao really didn't have any injuries at this moment. After being hit by the aura-shattering palm, not only did their primordial spirits suffer heavy damage, they didn't even have the most basic physical injuries. In contrast, he himself had suffered some minor injuries. Looking at it this way, although the strength of the two people in front of him was low, when they worked together, their combat strength and defense were not the slightest bit inferior to his. It could be said that they were on par with each other. There must be a reason for this abnormality. The man in gray's heart suddenly quivered. He felt that today's matter wouldn't be as easy and pleasant as he had imagined. Constantly paying attention to the changes in the expression of the man in gray, Lin Yi secretly let out a sigh of relief. From the beginning, the opponent had acted high and mighty and looked down on the two of them. But now, after one move, he was frightened by the appearance and thought too highly of the two of them. In fact, although the ghostly thing had erased the divine sense attack for Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, the lethality of the opponent's aura-shattering palms still couldn't be underestimated. Actually, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao had both suffered serious injuries. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in such a sorry state and been beaten to the ground. However, Lin Yi could heal himself quickly, and he was holding hands with Huang Xiaotao. In the time it took to say a few words, even Huang Xiaotao's injuries were healed. That was why he could appear so calm. However, the man in gray did not know this. In his eyes, he only knew that Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were facing the aura-shattering palm that he was most proud of. Whether it was their bodies or their primordial spirits, they were both unharmed. The meaning behind this was really chilling. All right, I'm not an unreasonable person. Since you've already proven your strength, then I admit that you have the qualifications to talk to me, the man in gray said in a deep voice. What do you mean? Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were slightly startled. With this sentence, the pressure that the man in gray gave them instantly disappeared. Seeing that the two of them weren't soft persimmons that he could easily bully, he was prepared to negotiate. This guy's skin was really thick. The truth was so. To be able to reach the original infant stage, the man in gray's experience and battle experience was definitely incomparably rich. Even if he couldn't see through Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao's trump card, he at least knew that these two people were definitely not as easy to deal with as he had imagined. If he continued to forcefully fight, although he believed that he had a higher chance of winning as an original infant stage expert, he would have to spend a lot of effort to deal with these two people just now. It was very likely that both of them would be injured. That wouldn't be worth it. What he was most afraid of was provoking a third party during the fight. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to get anything. It's very simple. According to the rules of the wilderness, whoever sees it gets half. As long as you hand over half of the nascent ginseng, I will let the two of you go. Well, water does not interfere with river water, the man in gray said with certainty. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4263. Half of the witnesses? That's a little too much. Lin Yi didn't directly refuse, but he didn't directly agree either. Instead, he revealed an awkward expression and frowned as if he was hesitating. Huang Xiaotao, who was at the side, didn't have any intention of speaking. Everything was decided by Lin Yi. She didn't participate in the decision-making and only listened to Lin Yi's instructions. Hearing Lin Yi's awkward tone, the man in gray didn't get angry. Instead, he was secretly happy. Listening to Lin Yi's words, there was a way. It was common knowledge that the higher a person's level was, the more they cherished their life. They wouldn't easily fight with others. This was human nature. If he was facing an original infant stage master, the man in gray might not hesitate to fight with his life. However, facing two golden core stage masters, it was like a billionaire wanting to die with a beggar on the side of the road. No matter how he thought about it, it was a big loss. Therefore, the man in gray wasn't afraid that Lin Yi would bargain with him. He was afraid that Lin Yi would be stubborn and fight with his life. In the end, both sides would suffer. This was definitely not a good thing for the man in gray. As long as you get half, you can go your own way and I will go my own way. As long as you get half of it, from now on, you can go your own way, and I'll go mine. I won't touch a single hair on your body. But if you don't give me half of it, then we'll have to fight to the death. Even if you have some skills, you're still only in the gold core stage. Just now, I was careless and held back, which allowed you to retreat. If we really fight, what do you think your chances of winning are? This? Lin Yi suddenly fell into hesitation. However, before the man in gray could secretly rejoice, he immediately said forcefully, "How many chances of winning are there? If we don't fight, how will we know? F***ck, what a stupid kid!" Hearing this, the man in gray was furious. He couldn't wait to kill this kid who didn't know what was good for him. "Let me give you a piece of advice. You better think carefully before you speak. I see you as the number one person. That's why I'm giving you a chance to discuss." The gray-clothed man really didn't want to fight to the death with Lin Yi and Lu Xing, so he could only continue to be patient. He said earnestly, "My patience is very limited. If you're just blindly pretending to be unreasonable, it's hard to say if the two of you can walk out of here alive if we really fight. The pros and cons are so obvious. You can't possibly be unable to see clearly, can you? But the two of us went through untold hardships to obtain the nascent ginseng, and you want half of it the moment you arrive. Are you kidding me?" Lin Yi pursed his lips and pretended to be tough, but there was clearly some unconcealable wavering in his expression. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be willing at this time. The gray-clothed man had already expected this and was secretly delighted. As long as this kid wasn't an idiot with a one-track mind, it wouldn't be a big problem. "So, you're saying that I'm asking for too much?" The gray-clothed man remained calm and collected. He frowned and said, "Of course, you're still talking about splitting half. There are 3 people here, and you're the one who came later. Why should I give you half, but the two of us can only share the other half?" Lin Yi pretended to be hesitant as he spoke. "Humph, so you're saying that it's my fault?" The gray-clothed man's expression didn't look too good. However, after seemingly struggling for a moment, he suddenly clenched his teeth and said, "Fine. Since it's like this, I'll take the initiative to take a step back. I don't need half, give me a third." On the surface, he looked pained, but in fact, it was just an act. At this moment, the gray-clothed man's heart was burning with greed. This was an entire nascent ginseng. Even if it was only a third, it was still a very big piece. "A third?" Lin Yi seemed to be somewhat moved, but he still hesitated and said, "But my teammates, for this nascent ginseng, lost 4 people. I'll just give you a third, kid. Let me tell you, a third is already my bottom line. Don't be ungrateful and take a mile when given an inch." The gray-clothed man's expression was gloomy. He originally thought that by taking a step back, the other party would definitely agree immediately. He didn't expect the other party to be so hesitant. He couldn't help but become angry again. "Take a mile when given an inch? Your words are the opposite. It was obviously our team that sacrificed 4 lives to obtain this nascent ginseng. The moment you came up, you want to take a third. Who is the one taking a mile when given an inch?" Lin Yi purposely scolded. "Then what do you want?" The gray-clothed man was instantly angered. He was an original infant stage expert. Facing 2 ants in the beginning stage of the Golden Dance stage, he had to lower his voice. That was fine. But now, not only did the other party not buy it, they even took advantage of him. This was really intolerable. Even if the uncle could tolerate it, the aunt couldn't. "What do you want?" Lin Yi asked back. "Kid, I'm being so kind to discuss with you. Don't think that I'm afraid of you. If you really make me lose my patience, today will be the day you die." The gray-clothed man's body was filled with murderous intent again. However, he didn't attack immediately. Instead, he continued, "How about this? 1/4, no less. Or else, I will kill you right now." "Oh, okay." Lin Yi seemed to be obediently nodding his head. However, before the gray-clothed man could be happy, the next sentence made him dumbfounded. "Then I will kill you." Before his voice died away, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao attacked again. The two of them had a tacit understanding. When Lin Yi spoke just now, he didn't leave any hints behind. Huang Xiaotao was already prepared. The raging fire 8 trigrams palm strike was instantly launched. The gray-clothed man instantly turned pale. Just now, it was Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao who initiated the attack. He didn't expect the scene to repeat itself. It was Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao who initiated the attack again. It seemed that the two of them didn't even consider him, an original infant stage expert, to be a threat. Humph, since you want to die, then I will grant your wish. The gray-clothed man was so angry that he laughed. After all, he was an original infant stage expert. Even though Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao's attack was so sudden, he was still able to react in time. Immediately, he gathered all his qi and used the crushing yuan palm strike again. The gray-clothed man sneered. His body was filled with murderous intent. He didn't use all his strength in that attack just now, but this time, he wanted to teach the two of them the true strength of an original infant stage expert. Bang! The four palms collided, creating another wave of qi. However, this time, it was different from before. Before, they were evenly matched, but this time, the gray-clothed man didn't hold back. He gathered all his qi into his palms and sent Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao flying. He himself didn't move an inch. It was obvious who was stronger. Did you see that? This is real. The gray-clothed man laughed proudly. However, before he could even finish the word power, the situation suddenly changed. The two of them were indeed sent flying by him. Unfortunately, before Lin Yi was sent flying, he suddenly threw something at him with his other hand. Mobile and reading readers, if you have a monthly ticket, please support the Fishman. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4264. The gray-clothed man didn't think that Lin Yi would have another move. Even at this point he was caught off guard and got hit in the face by that thing. A super bomb that was a combination of pure energy and Dan fire. This was Lin Yi's true killer move. He had purposely stalled for time just so he could create this bomb. The man in gray didn't know what this thing was, but it emitted an extremely dangerous aura that made him tremble in fear. Sadly, in order to ensure that he could kill Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao in one move, he gathered all the pure energy in his body into his palms. At this very moment, his face was completely unprotected. Boom! The super bomb directly exploded on the man in gray's face, causing the nearby forest to tremble. Not only was the entire graveyard of spiritual beasts alarmed, but even the spiritual beasts and cultivators within 100 miles were shocked by this sudden eruption of energy. They didn't dare to move for a long time. When this super bomb exploded, the entire graveyard of spiritual beasts shook. The man in gray, who couldn't dodge in time, was blasted black all over and his face was covered in blood. However, the vitality of an original level cultivator was truly terrifying. Even so, this guy didn't die. Instead, he screamed in pain from the explosion. Even Lin Yi himself was shocked by the scene. The super bomb was his final trump card, and if even this couldn't kill the man in gray, then he was in deep trouble. However, when he saw the condition of the man in gray, Lin Yi's worried heart finally calmed down. Though this person didn't die, it was obvious that he was severely injured. Most importantly, his eyes were blinded by the explosion. Even though cultivators of the original level were used to using their soul to sense things, most of the time, they still relied on their eyes. This was especially obvious at the moment when his eyes had just been blinded. Even if he knew that he could use his divine sense to replace his senses, he would still be subconsciously panic-stricken. He became truly blind. Let's go together. Don't give him a chance to breathe. Lin Yi gave Huang Xiaotao a meaningful glance and shouted at the same time. This was because both he and Huang Xiaotao had suffered serious injuries from the palm strike just now. Even with his ability, there was no way for him to recover in such a short period of time. However, there was no time to lose. This was the gray-clothed man's weakest moment. If he missed this opportunity, he would have to wait until he calmed down. In that case, all of his previous efforts would be in vain. With the opponent's strength as a nascent soul stage expert, once he recovered, even if he couldn't kill Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, if he wanted to escape, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao absolutely wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Sure enough, Lin Yi's deliberate stern shout caused the already panic-stricken and miserable gray-clothed man to be even more at a loss. This was a psychological attack. Facing this kind of enemy, Not to mention Lin Yi, even Huang Xiaotao wouldn't be merciful. Her many years of experience in the trial missions had taught her that being merciful to one's enemy was equivalent to being cruel to oneself. He immediately cooperated with Lin Yi and attacked with all his strength. Boom! Two frenzied fire 8 trigrams palm strike accurately hit the gray-clothed man's vital point. He was already seriously injured by the super bomb, and this attack made his situation even worse. After screaming and struggling for a moment, he finally couldn't move anymore. He's dead. Lin Yi checked the gray-clothed man's chi. After confirming it, he finally let out a long breath. He nodded lightly at Huang Xiaotao. Huang Xiaotao's legs softened and she almost fell to the ground. From the moment the gray-clothed man suddenly appeared until now, her nerves had been stretched taut. Facing a nascent soul stage enemy at such a close distance, that kind of terrifying pressure that almost materialized was really not something an ordinary person could withstand. This was also because most of the opponent's attention was on Lin Yi. More than 70% of the pressure was blocked by Lin Yi. Otherwise, if Huang Xiaotao was alone, she really couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't have the courage to make a move. If it was any other expert in the early gold core stage, they would probably have already been scared to the ground. After confirming that the gray-clothed man was dead, Lin Yi conveniently searched his body. Killing people and robbing their treasures was common sense in the cultivation world. Although the original intention was not like this, since he had already killed the person, Lin Yi would not mind making a fortune from the dead person. This was a nascent soul stage expert. Anything that dropped from his body would definitely be a rare treasure. Maybe there was something good that Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao could use. After searching the gray-clothed man's body for a moment, Lin Yi found an exquisitely designed secret pocket in the wide sleeve of his right hand. After pulling it out and looking at the thing inside, he was suddenly shocked. "What's wrong?" Huang Xiaotao asked nervously, thinking that something had happened. "Nothing much. I just suddenly realized that this guy is actually a good person," Lin Yi said with a strange expression. "Ah? He's a good person?" Huang Xiaotao was even more puzzled. She really thought that she had killed the wrong person. She couldn't help but panic and said, Then what should we do? Didn't we kill a good person by mistake?" "Not really. If we don't kill him, to us, he is not a good person." Lin Yi smiled and then handed the bag to Huang Xiaotao. "Take a look." Huang Xiaotao was confused. She took the bag and looked inside. Suddenly, her whole body was stunned. She cried out in disbelief. This is the universal golden dan fruit?" The bag was not big, and there were only a few heavenly treasures in it. Judging from the looks of it, the gray-clothed man had just come to Lufeng Forest to collect them. Anything that could catch his eye would naturally not be ordinary. Any one of the items in the bag was a good item that could not be bought in the market. Huang Xiaotao could not recognize the others for the time being, but she recognized two of the fruits at a glance. They were the universal golden dan fruit that she and Lin Yi had obtained at Hutsai Tianwu Mountain. Not bad. I was just about to doze off and he took the initiative to give me a pillow. Xiaotao, do you think this guy is a good person? Lin Yi laughed and was in a good mood. Although the nascent ginseng was far more valuable than the universal golden dan fruit, for Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, the nascent ginseng was not needed in a short period of time. What they needed the most now was the universal golden dan fruit. This time, the reason why they agreed to come to Lufeng Forest with Guodangtao was because of the universal golden dan fruit. However, because of the existence of Chububi, they changed their mind at the last minute. Lin Yi didn't think that this trip to Lufeng Forest would end up like this. He just gotten the ginseng and now someone was giving him the Wanda golden dan fruit. Luck was on his side and he couldn't stop it at all. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4265. Lin Yi couldn't help but exclaim. This was the will of the heavens. The man in gray was an original leveled cultivator, so the myriad cross and golden dan fruit was useless to him aside from trading. Yet, it was found in his pouch. If this wasn't the will of the heavens, then what was it? Of course, no matter how lucky one was, one must have the ability to do so. If someone else was in Lin Yi's position, they would have been killed by the man in gray a long time ago. That wasn't good luck, it was bad luck. Okay, let's hurry up and leave. This place is far too dangerous. Lin Yi placed the pouch inside his jade space and didn't dare to stay any longer. He didn't even care about his injuries and quickly left with Huang Xiaotao. He didn't really care. He just needed to hold Huang Xiaotao's hand and help her recover. Huang Xiaotao nodded. She knew that they couldn't stay here any longer, and they had to leave as soon as possible. After such a big commotion, the man in gray was right in front of them. If they stayed any longer, who knew if another person would appear out of nowhere? This was the core area of Lufeng Forest. Other than Chu Bubi, who was an exception, those who could enter this place were all original leveled cultivators. This wasn't a joke. The two of them immediately fled, but they didn't dare to run around randomly. Instead, they followed the route that Chu Bubi had given them and retraced their steps. This was the only way to escape unscathed. Otherwise, if they were careless, they might run into the nest of a powerful spiritual beast. That would be a real joke. 2 hours later, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were a few dozen miles away from the spiritual beast graveyard. They didn't encounter any accidents along the way, nor were there any people or spiritual beasts tailing them. The entire journey was peaceful. Okay, we should be fine now. Let's stop and rest. Let's heal our injuries before we leave. Lin Yi spoke. Huang Xiaotao was fine. While they were running, they were healing the remaining injuries in her body. However, he was still injured. Though it wasn't serious, it wasn't a good thing to drag it out for too long. He needed to heal himself as soon as possible. Yes. Huang Xiaotao nodded while gasping for breath. In such a dense forest, she had been running non-stop for 4 hours. She had been relying on the little bit of Jinqi in her body to support herself. If she did not quickly take a rest, she would definitely die. She couldn't hold on much longer. Lin Yi looked around and found a relatively clean big rock. He let Huang Xiaotao sit on it while he healed himself. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, the remaining injuries on his body had been completely swept away. Not only did his entire body feel relaxed, even his spirit, energy, and essence had become much better. Besides healing his injuries, Lin Yi had also transferred a large amount of true energy to Huang Xiaotao. This was an inevitable choice. Putting aside the intimate relationship between Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, Lin Yi had to ensure that Huang Xiaotao had sufficient combat strength at all times. After all, this was the Lufeng Forest that was filled with danger. No matter what happened, it wouldn't be surprising. I'm fine now. Shall we continue? Huang Xiaotao asked as she stretched her arms and legs in high spirits. There's no need for that. Anyway, there shouldn't be any trouble now. It's rare for us to come to Lufeng Forest, and there's still a lot of time before the miasma returns. Let's just walk around here. If we're lucky, we might run into something good. Lin Yi shook his head. Along the way, he had carefully confirmed the time when the miasma would dissipate in Lufeng Forest from Guidengtao and the others. According to his previous experience, there was still at least half a month before the miasma returns. There was still plenty of time. Although the two most eye-catching treasures of Lufeng Forest, the infant ginseng and the golden dan fruit of 10,000 crossing, had been obtained one after another, ordinary people would be trembling with fear and would only think of running away at this time. However, Lin Yi had never been such a mediocre person. He wouldn't be greedy for treasures beyond his ability, no matter how good they were. However, he wouldn't easily let go of things within his ability. Yes, I'll listen to you. Huang Xiaotao nodded. If she was alone with the infant ginseng and the golden dan fruit of 10,000 crossing, she probably wouldn't dare to continue to stay here. However, now that she was following Lin Yi, there was no such worry at all. Then let's look around here. However, for safety's sake, we can't stray too far from this route map. Lin Yi referred to the so-called family map of Chu Bubi. In terms of location, this was still considered a relatively central place in Lufeng Forest. The only place that could be confirmed as safe was the route that they had walked before. Otherwise, if they walked around without any care, it wouldn't be called daring but courting death. Just as Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were ready to continue searching for treasures, there was suddenly an additional figure in the messy spiritual beast graveyard. It was a black-clothed man under a bamboo hat. It was actually picked by someone. Was I a step too late? The black-clothed man looked at the traces left by the fight in front of him. He observed the fog that should have been there but had dissipated. He also observed the frightening corpse of the man in gray. He couldn't help but be stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. This time, he came all the way from the North Island just for the infant ginseng. However, he was a step too late, and it was taken by someone else. How could he endure this? If it was someone else, it would be a pity to miss out on such an important treasure like the nascent ginseng. However, the problem was that he didn't come here to collect the nascent ginseng for his own use. It's over! It's over! It's over! The black-clothed man suddenly became anxious. He scratched his head and muttered to himself, "This is the key material for the research of gene medicine. Last time, the original infant ginseng failed to make the gene medicine. It's very likely that there's a problem with the gene imitation of the infant ginseng. I must find the real infant ginseng to find a way to remedy it. But now, when I go back, how do I explain it to Miss Wan?" Creating a nascent soul stage master was the most important project in the headquarters recently. If the whole project came to a standstill because of a bad start and dragged on for a long time, it might even be aborted halfway. This was a huge responsibility that no one could afford to bear. When he thought of this serious consequence, the black-clothed man suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. The organization's cruel means of punishment was really not something that an ordinary person could bear. Damn it! If I find out who took the infant ginseng first, I will tear him into pieces. The black-clothed man gritted his teeth and shouted angrily. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4266. In an instant, his murderous aura that was almost tangible poured out. Some of the powerful spiritual beasts that were attracted earlier were so frightened that they ran away in embarrassment. They didn't dare to get close. The murderous aura was strong, but the black-clothed man was too late. The two of them had already walked for 4 hours, and were tens of miles away. No matter how strong their detection methods were, they wouldn't be able to find them. The man in black was powerful, but unfortunately, he didn't even know who his target was. It was even more impossible for him to know where his target was. What could he do? With a heart full of unwillingness, the man in black stayed where he was for a while. In the end, he decided to go back first. Based on the information he received, there was only one place in Lufeng Forest that produced infant ginseng. Even if it appeared in other places, the chances were minuscule. If he were to search aimlessly, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Plus, the infant ginseng had a unique rumor. It wasn't that there was only one infant ginseng in the world. It was that in the same area, there would only be one infant ginseng and there would never be a second one. Because the infant ginseng's growth conditions were very harsh. Not only did it require an abundant amount of spiritual energy, but it also required an abundant amount of yin energy. The only place that could satisfy these two conditions was the spiritual beast graveyard in the various primitive lands. Lufeng Forest only had one spiritual beast graveyard. At most, it could only produce one infant ginseng. Even if someone purposely cultivated a second infant ginseng, it wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, to the man in black who was in a hurry to find the infant ginseng, instead of staying in Lufeng Forest and wasting time, it was better to hurry back. Maybe he would have a chance to find the infant ginseng in other primitive lands. However, the man in black was helpless. Just as he was about to leave, he inadvertently glanced at the corpse on the side. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. He turned around and walked over. He lowered his head and carefully observed. The man in gray died in an extremely horrible way. His face was unrecognizable. There were injuries all over his body, especially his head. If one's nerves weren't thick enough, a normal person would have vomited just by looking at it. Why is this injury? After the man in black examined it for a while, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He didn't move for a long time. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and disappeared into the dense forest. Shout out, let's stop here. If we go any further, we will be too far from the route Chububi gave us. It might be dangerous. Lin Yi, who had been shuttling through the dense forest, suddenly stopped. Oh, then are we going back just like that? Huang Xiaotao nodded. He looked at Lin Yi and said, Go back? How can we just go back like this? Xiaotao, look around you. Aren't there top-notch spirit herbs everywhere? With this quality, it can be used to refine pills that are of the highest quality. Lin Yi smiled as he pointed around. Really? That's great. Huang Xiaotao was delighted. At that moment, there were indeed quite a number of spiritual herbs around the two of them. Since no one came to Lufeng Forest all year round and it was a relatively central place, spiritual herbs could be seen everywhere. That was a very normal thing. However, even though they were both natural treasures, compared to the rare nascent ginseng and the myriad crossing golden dan fruit, they were much weaker. The value of the spiritual herbs around them was much lower. Most of the spiritual herbs here could be bought in the market with spiritual jades. Of course, compared to those sold in the market, the quality of the spiritual herbs in front of them was obviously much better. However, Lin Yi was somewhat disappointed. With the support of a money-making machine like the Tianan Pavilion, he did not lack spiritual jades at all. He could buy these spiritual herbs at any time. As for the quality, he had the space in the jade pendant. The quality of the spiritual herbs cultivated by the seeds of the spiritual herbs was not inferior to the spiritual herbs in front of him. But even so, Lin Yi still pulled Huang Xiaotao along with him and started pulling the herbs in front of them like a tornado. Lin Yi, it's not good to pull them out like this, right? Even though Huang Xiaotao had followed Lin Yi and was used to all kinds of magical things, she could not help but twitch her mouth when she saw this scene. Not good? What's not good about it? Anyway, they are all ownerless items. Everyone who sees them has a share. Even if we don't pick them, others might not come here. Lin Yi did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. That's not what I meant. I wanted to say. Huang Xiaotao looked at Lin Yi's swift and decisive methods and said weakly, Spiritual herbs don't seem to be picked like this. More than 60% of the trial missions that Huang Xiaotao had done in the past were to collect spiritual herbs. Therefore, she was quite experienced in the process of collecting spiritual herbs and could be considered half an expert. Spiritual herbs were existences that absorbed the essence of heaven and earth. The requirements for their growth were much harsher than ordinary plants. Correspondingly, their vitality was much weaker in comparison. Whether it was to collect them in the wild or cultivate them themselves, a considerable degree of professional knowledge was required. Even the most layman's method of collecting spiritual herbs had to be gentle during the process. After carefully cleaning the soil, they would be stored in a special spiritual jade box for preservation. This way, the vitality and freshness of the spiritual herbs could be guaranteed to the greatest extent. Lin Yi's actions, however, didn't look like he was being careful at all. He looked like he was pulling weeds out of the ground, and he didn't even prepare a special jade box. He was just pulling it out casually. Huang Xiaotao broke out in a cold sweat as she watched. She couldn't help but think, what a waste. Oh, that's fine. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently, but his hands did not stop at all. Actually, many spiritual herbs will dry up after being pulled out of the soil for a long time. If you don't store them in a special spiritual jade box, it's useless no matter how much you pull them out. Huang Xiaotao reminded weakly. I know this. Xiaotao, don't worry. I have my ways. You just have to do as I say. Lin Yi suddenly smiled. Other people had to be careful when collecting spiritual herbs. However, he had the space in the jade pendant. He could easily pull out the spiritual herbs on the ground. As long as he put them into the space in the jade pendant, there would be no problem. There was naturally infinite spiritual energy in the jade pendant, which could allow these spiritual herbs to continue to grow. In the future, Whenever he needed them, he could look for them in the space in the jade pendant. He could guarantee that the quality would only be better than when he collected them. This was an effect that others could not achieve no matter how well they prepared. Oh, okay then. Seeing that Lin Yi was so confident, Huang Xiaotao nodded obediently, and did not continue to ask. She also copied Lin Yi and used this unprecedented rough style to pull weeds. Mobile phone summons and monthly reading tickets. Mobile readers with tickets support. Chidian readers can give some recommendation votes. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4267. The two of them plucked more than half of the surrounding area in the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Everywhere they passed, there was not an inch of grass left behind. This place could be said to be a natural spiritual herb garden. Spiritual herbs could be seen everywhere. Not only were there many types of spiritual herbs, but they were also of excellent quality. With so many spiritual herbs, other people would have to work for at least a few days to be able to collect all of them. However, with Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao's terrifying efficiency, they would probably be able to finish plucking all the spiritual herbs in another incense stick's time. This was because they did not even look at the spiritual herbs and pluck them as soon as they saw them. They did not even need to take any protective measures. After Huang Xiaotao plucked them, the only thing Lin Yi had to do was to put the spiritual herbs away and plant them in the space of the jade pendant. Then, all of them would be ready. As the two of them were busy, Lin Yi suddenly frowned slightly. There was a rustling sound in the dense forest in the distance. He could tell that it was the sound of footsteps approaching from afar. Judging from the sound, it should be people, and there's more than one. What should we do? Huang Xiaotao noticed Lin Yi's expression and quickly realized that she was not inferior to Lin Yi in terms of familiarity with the dense forest and perception in the forest. It's okay. Let's continue with our work. Don't worry about it. Lin Yi smiled faintly and had no intention of avoiding it. Although the spiritual herbs here were not rare, it was better than nothing. After all, the space in the jade pendant was huge. Moreover, Lin Yi had another deeper consideration. If he and Huang Xiaotao deliberately avoided it, and were discovered by those people, they might think that they had obtained some great treasure. That was why they had a guilty conscience. Instead of getting into trouble, it was better to continue plucking the spiritual herbs naturally. After all, there were many cultivators who came to Lufeng Forest to explore. If there was no conflict of interest, the other party would not take the initiative to make things difficult for them. Of course, in order to conceal the existence of the jade pendant space, Lin Yi still took the basket beside him and placed all the spirit herbs he was going to collect into the basket. It was fine if Huang Xiaotao knew about the jade pendant space, but it would be bad if an outsider knew about it. The two of them continued to pull out the weeds. After a while, a group of people appeared in front of them. Lin Yi raised his head and looked at them. There were 4 men and 2 women, a total of 6 people. They should have teleported here together. From their demeanor and aura, it was easy to determine that the leader of the 6 should be the green-robed middle-aged man walking in the middle. Although this person's figure and appearance did not stand out from others, at first glance, he was just ordinary, and his temperament was no different from Guidingtao's from before. However, if one paid close attention, they would discover that this person was full of vigor. His slightly ordinary appearance actually had quite a bit of heroic spirit, especially this person's extremely sharp eyes, like a sharp knife. A casual glance from him would unconsciously make one tremble with fear. More importantly, among the 6 people who came, only the green-robed middle-aged man's strength could not be seen through by Lin Yi's golden finger. In other words, this person's strength was at least at the nascent soul stage. As for the other 5 people, they were all masters of the golden core stage. The strongest was at the peak of the golden core stage, and the weakest was at the intermediate stage. Lin Yi's heart couldn't help but tremble. The strength of the team in front of him was more than a level stronger than his and Chu Bubi's team. They were simply not on the same level at all. But thinking about it carefully, only this kind of team would dare to enter the depths of Lufeng Forest. Otherwise, with Chu Bubi's team, without the route map, it would be impossible to reach the core area. While the two of them were observing the newcomer had noticed them as well. He took one look at the spirit herbs in the basket, then at what the two of them were doing, and burst into laughter at the same time. As if they had seen an unbelievable funny scene, the people who came laughed loudly. Their faces were full of mockery and disdain. Brother Chang, during this time in Lufeng Forest, there are really all kinds of people. There are actually these bumpkins who haven't seen the world. Of all the things they can do here, they are actually squatting here pulling grass. This is really funny. An extremely coquettish woman leaned half of her body on the chest of the green-robed middle-aged man. She covered her mouth and laughed in front of Lin Yi and Chu Bubi. Lin Yi glanced at her lightly. This coquettish woman had the strength of the late gold core stage, which was not bad. It seemed that she had a close relationship with the leader, Brother Chang. They should be Taoist companions. Ha 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 ha, yes! Brother Chang, I'd bet that these two people must be from a cultivator tribe who has never seen the world. They just saw some common elixirs and thought they were good treasures. A man next to him laughed, and pointed at Lin Yi and Chu Bubi. I say, even if you two fill this basket, you won't be able to earn back the 10,000 spirit jades of the teleportation array. It is completely a waste of effort. I really don't know what your brains are made of. This person's strength was at the peak of the late gold core stage. He was the strongest among the 6 people except for the leader, Brother Chang. Seeing that he was so agreeable to the coquettish woman, he was obviously Brother Chang's younger brother. Otherwise, he would not work so hard to flatter his sister-in-law. That's right. This place isn't considered the outskirts anymore. They've taken such a huge risk to come here. Everyone else is here for the rare heavenly treasures, but these two are actually here to pull out the weeds. Their brains really make me speechless. I'm very curious. They are only at the early gold core stage. How did they come in here with such weak strength? Needless to say, they rely on luck. With their weak strength, it is difficult to move around in the periphery of Lufeng Forest, let alone in this place. It is a rare miracle that they can survive until now with their hands and feet intact. Not necessarily. That might not be the case. From the periphery to this place, they have to pass through the territories of a few powerful spiritual beasts. Even if they were lucky, they would not be able to enter by themselves. Furthermore, they must have gathered 6 people in the beginning to be teleported in. I guess they were abandoned by their teammates because they were too weak, that's right. In Lufeng Forest, the strength of the early gold core stage is simply a burden. If I were their teammate, I would definitely not be willing to bring these 2 burdens with me. After gathering enough people to be teleported in, of course, they will go their separate ways. In front of Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, these people were mercilessly ridiculing. Only Brother Chang, who was the leader, looked indifferent and did not speak. R1152. Chapter 4268. Being ridiculed by so many people, most people would have lost their cool. However, Lin Yi remained unfazed. He continued to squat on the ground and focused on pulling out the weeds. He didn't seem to have any intention to speak. He treated everyone like air and ignored them from the beginning to the end. Huang Xiaotao, who was standing at the side, was a little nervous. However, she wasn't a hot-tempered person. Even though she was being ridiculed like this, it was common for her to be disfigured. Therefore, she didn't take it to heart. As for Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, Brother Chang didn't care too much about them. However, after witnessing their performance, he couldn't help but think highly of them. Being ridiculed by so many people and yet able to maintain their composure, it was rare to see someone like that. If it was someone else in their position, they wouldn't dare to retaliate due to the difference in their abilities. However, they definitely wouldn't be able to be as calm as Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. Even with Brother Chang's experience, his eyes couldn't help but brighten up. All right, everyone, stop mocking them. Who hasn't been a newbie before? We all went through that stage. There's no need to be so sarcastic. Brother Chang waved his hand at everyone. He had the demeanor of an original infant cultivator. Everyone instantly stopped talking. Then, he turned to Linny and Huang Xiaotao and said, "Both of you, it seems like this is your first time in Lufeng Forest, right?" "That's right. This is indeed our first time here." Linny raised his head and looked at him. He replied in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. "Yo, young man, you've got guts. How dare you act tough in front of our brother Chang?" The young man at the peak of the advanced stage of the Golden Elixir realm jumped out immediately. He rolled up his sleeves and was ready to teach Linny a lesson. However, Brother Chang merely gave him a look and the young man immediately retreated in embarrassment. He didn't even dare to complain. This person had accumulated a lot of power. Linny already felt that this person wasn't simple. At this moment, he was even more certain of this point. Normally, people who had accumulated a lot of power were people who had a strong desire for control. Both of them were powerful people with a strong desire for control. If they could comply with his wishes, then everything would be fine. However, if they disobeyed him and caused things to get out of his control, then it would be very troublesome. Although what they said just now wasn't pleasant to the ears, there was one thing that they were right about. Listen to my advice. Although the spirit herbs on the side look pretty good, even if you fill 10 baskets with them, you won't be able to obtain them. It can't even compare to the 10,000 spirit jades you two paid for the teleportation formation. It's not worth it at all, Brother Chang advised. Oh? Linny and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other in surprise. This Brother Chang seemed unexpectedly warm and genial, and he was easier to talk to than they had imagined. With how the cultivation world was filled with deceit and deceit, there were usually only two outcomes for encountering each other in a place like Lufeng Forest. They could either kill each other and steal their treasures, or they could just pass each other by. There were very few people like him who would take the initiative to stop and give advice. Not to mention, this was a high and mighty nascent soul expert. Thank you for your reminder. It's our first time coming to this place. However, we were separated from our teammates, and we didn't dare to wander around in this dense forest. We didn't know where to go, so we could only look for these spirit herbs. It's better than going back empty-handed. Linny came up with an excuse on the spur of the moment. Well, no wonder you're here to collect spirit herbs. Normal people come here for rare treasures like the myriad crossing golden dan fruit. This is the only way it's worth it. Moreover, this is the most famous treasure that Lufeng Forest has ever produced. Brother Chang immediately revealed a look of understanding and said to the two of them with a faint smile. We've also heard of the myriad crossing golden dan fruit. Of course, we want it too. It's a pity that we don't know where to look for it. Moreover, we were separated from our teammates. With just our strength, even if we know where it is, we probably won't be able to go. Linny pretended to sigh helplessly, but he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He had already obtained the myriad crossing golden dan fruit. Wouldn't it be stupid to look for it again? He and Huang Xiaotao weren't greedy people. Rather than taking risks for nothing, it was better to stop and collect more spirit herbs. When it was about time, they would use the teleportation array to leave. This was the safest way. That's true. In the face of such a great treasure, the two of you are still able to keep your hearts. It's not easy to have such self-awareness. Brother Chang praised them and immediately changed the topic. However, rather than wasting time here, why don't the two of you come with us? Come with you? Linny was stunned and looked at Huang Xiaotao. They didn't know each other, and normal people knew the requirements of their teammates. They didn't expect the other party to suddenly make such a suggestion. That's right. We are preparing to go to the ruins of the Audiobook cultivation city. The more people there are, the better. It's a pity that only 6 people can go through the teleportation array. I didn't expect to meet the two of you here. This is also a rare fate. Chang Bro was quite approachable as he took the initiative to explain. You'll be able to get something in return if you come with us. It's much better than staying here and pulling weeds, right? We'll be able to look after each other, and it'll be safer as well. What do you two think? Oh? The ruins of the Audiobook cultivation city? What is that place? Is there any treasure inside? Linny couldn't help but ask. When they were with Chu Booby and the others, everyone's focus was on the nascent ginseng. They rarely mentioned anything unrelated. As for the so-called ruins of the Audiobook cultivation city, they had never heard of it. You haven't heard of it? Brother Chang was also slightly stunned. This place was considered one of the labels of Lufeng Forest. However, considering that it was Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao's first time here, it was not surprising that they had not heard of it. Yes, we are not locals, so we are ignorant. Please excuse us. Lin Yi was slightly embarrassed as he cupped his hands. It's nothing. The ruins of the Audiobook cultivation city used to be an important city of the spirit beasts. It is said that it was not small at that time, and it was the symbol and center of power of the entire Lufeng Forest. However, for some unknown reason, all the spirit beasts in the city were punished by the king of the spirit beasts. They were all sentenced to death overnight. Since then, it became a deserted city, which is now the so-called ruins. Brother Chang took the initiative to explain to the two of them. Lin Yi came to a realization, and the doubt that had been lingering in his mind was finally solved. Although Lufeng Forest was on the edge of the southern island, it was still within the southern island, and there were powerful spirit beasts there. Why did the spirit beasts not care about this place? Floating astronomy. Chapter 4269. After all, if the spiritual beasts got involved, even if the miasma dissipated, human cultivators would not dare to come in and take the risk to search for treasures. Even original infant-stage cultivators would not dare to do so. This was because it was equivalent to provoking the entire spiritual beast clan. It was not something that could be withstood with just a little bit of strength. But now, Lin Yi finally understood. This place was indeed the spiritual beast clan's territory. However, after that incident, the spiritual beast clan abandoned this place, and no one ever bothered about it. That was why it became like this today. Lin Yi even guessed that for some unknown reason, the spirit beast king didn't really plan on abandoning this place after killing everyone here. After all, this Lufeng Forest was a treasure that couldn't be underestimated by any faction. It was just that the spirit beast king had gone missing, and the spirit beasts were in chaos from top to bottom, so no one had the time to care about this place. That was the only reason why Lufeng Forest was still in a semi-open state. If it were not for the miasma, the human cultivators around the South Island would have swarmed there. No matter how many treasures of heaven and earth there were in Lufeng Forest, it would not be enough for them to fight for them all year round. The primeval land would probably be ruined from then on. Of course, if that really happened, the spiritual beast clan would not just ignore it. By then, the situation would be completely different. Perhaps Lufeng Forest would be under martial law and human cultivators would not be able to step foot in it anymore. So, the Audiobook cultivation city's ruins must be very famous? Lin Yi asked thoughtfully. Of course. The ruins of Audiobook cultivation city are not an exaggeration to say that it is the symbol of Lufeng Forest. Also, the spiritual beasts that could stay in the city were all powerful and noble. Anything left behind by spiritual beasts of that level would be a rare treasure in the outside world. Therefore, this is a publicly recognized treasure. Anyone who stays in the sea area for a few days will have heard about it. Brother Chang nodded and said, Since it's so famous, people must have flocked to it. No matter how many treasures there are inside, they should have all been taken by now. Lin Yi looked at Chang Bro, a little disinterested. He wasn't as excited as other people when they heard about treasures, but rather doubtful and judgmental. It's rare for you to have such willpower. Brother Chang smiled when he heard that. Then he said, Logically speaking, that's true. However, Lufeng Forest can only be entered at this time of the year. Moreover, the ruins of the auto cultivation city are located in the depths of the core. Ordinary people can't go there. Although the ruins are famous and everyone knows about it, the price of a map to get there is sky high. Therefore, only a few people can go there. It's not as much as you think. Oh? However, according to common sense, even if not many people went there, everyone would try their best to plunder all the treasures. In this way, only the first few people would be able to obtain the treasures. It should be very difficult for those who go after that to gain much, right? Lin Yi was still somewhat disapproving. What kind of attitude is that? With Brother Chang's status, talking to a country bumpkin like you is condescending. Do you understand? You don't believe one or two. He really didn't want the face I gave him. You. The coquettish woman next to Brother Chang curled her lips and said disdainfully. However, before she could finish, Brother Chang turned around and glanced at her. Instantly his eyebrows drooped. He immediately lowered his eyebrows and did not dare to say another word. When Lin Yi saw this scene, he could not help but secretly shake his head. Even his Taoist companion was so afraid of him. It could be seen that this Brother Chang was really not an approachable person. However, such a person was actually so amiable to an outsider he did not know. Moreover, he was a beginner of the gold elixir realm who was not even on the same level as him. It was really incomprehensible. There must be a reason for this. This person might be another Chu Booby. What little brother said is actually not unreasonable. However, the scale of the ruins is larger than that of an ordinary human city. With just a few waves of human cultivators, it is impossible to collect all the treasures in a short period of time. Therefore, the treasures buried in the ruins will not be completely plundered. Brother Chang turned his head and said to Lin Yi, and his expression became calm and warm again. Chapter 4270. Neither. I'll be frank with you. Our goal for this trip is the Star Ink milk. Elder Brother Chang was very frank and directly stated their group's intentions. Star Ink milk? Lin Yi was shocked when he heard this. He had never heard of such a thing, but this name was only one word different from the Star Ink stone. Could there be some connection between the two? That's right. The Star Ink milk can be said to be one of the most famous treasures produced in the Audiobook cultivation city ruins. Because it is formed naturally, even if someone takes all of it, it will gather again after a period of time. Unlike other treasures, you don't have to look for it everywhere. That's why everyone scrambles for it. It's a must-have for almost everyone who enters the ruins, Elder Brother Chang said with certainty. May I ask, what is the use of this Star Ink milk? Lin Yi's heart stirred as he asked. As long as he knew its use, he could basically deduce whether it had any connection with the Star Ink stone or not. The Star Ink milk is rumored to be a marrow-cleansing liquid that can help one become the strongest nascent soul cultivator. Even for someone like me who has already condensed a nascent soul, the effects after using it are very rare. The value of a small bottle of Star Ink milk, if taken to the market, is no less than the nascent ginseng. At this point, even this Brother Chang, who had always maintained the demeanor of an expert, could not help but have a burning gaze. It was clear that he was determined to obtain the Star Ink milk. The effect of becoming the strongest nascent soul cultivator is actually so exaggerated. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and simultaneously sucked in a breath of cold air. In particular, Lin Yi's heart was currently in a perilous state. The Star Ink stone could become the strongest golden core cultivator, and the Star Ink milk could become the strongest nascent soul cultivator. Could it be that they were in the same series? While he was shocked, Lin Yi's heart was burning with passion. He was now in the early golden core stage and had the myriad crossing golden core fruit. When he returned, he would be able to quickly improve. In the future, if he had a fortuitous encounter, advancing to the golden core perfection stage would not be too far away. And the key was that now that he had the nascent ginseng, if he could find a way to get this Star Ink milk, wouldn't everything be smooth sailing? This was a rare opportunity. If the other party was talking about something like the infant ginseng, Lin Yi might not be moved. After all, he already had it in his hands. For him, the temptation was not as great as the others. However, this Star Ink milk could complement the infant ginseng. The meaning behind it was completely different. Big Brother Chang nodded and said, if that wasn't the case, why would the world bring up the Star Ink milk every time the ruins of Audiobook cultivation city are mentioned? But since the Star Ink milk is so well known, and you've just said that almost everyone who goes to the ruins on an adventure will go to find this Star Ink milk as their first stop, I'm guessing that someone has already gotten to it, right? Linny asked again. Even if the star ink milk could be replenished, it would definitely take a lot of time. It was impossible for it to be inexhaustible like seawater. It had already been a few days since the miasma dissipated. Those who had this idea had probably already gone to the ruins of Audwa Cultivation City. The star ink milk was a treasure that was hard to find in this world. Naturally, they would collect as much as they could. There was no way someone would be so kind as to leave some for those who came after them. Little brother, there is something you don't know. The star ink milk is indeed widely known, and everyone who goes to the ruins will think of finding it first. However, the number of people who can actually obtain it can be counted on one hand. Big Brother Chang smiled mysteriously and said, "There are not many people who can actually find the ruins of Audwa Cultivation City, and the information on the location of the star ink milk is not available on the market. No matter how much spirit jade you spend, you won't be able to buy it. At most, there are only a few people who know about it, and everyone will definitely keep this information a secret. So that's how it is." Linny nodded with a look of understanding. What the guy said was reasonable. The star ink milk could be regenerated every once in a while, and as long as they had accurate information on the location, it was basically the same as being able to get a steady supply of star ink milk every once in a while. This was a true strategic resource. The value of the information on the exact location was even greater than the star ink milk itself. It could even become a core secret passed down from generation to generation. It was not an exaggeration to say that this level of information could not be bought on the market. Among all the human cultivators, I dare say that the number of people who know the true location of the star ink milk is definitely less than 5. Big Brother Chang said confidently. Forgive me for asking, but since this information is so rare, how did you know about it? Linny suddenly asked, then added, Of course, if it's not convenient for you to answer, just pretend I didn't ask. It's fine. As soon as Linny said this, the others on the side immediately revealed looks of mockery and contempt. Although they did not dare to rebuke Linny because of Big Brother Chang's prestige, their eyes clearly expressed the same meaning. This country bumpkin really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Big Brother Chang did him the honor of speaking a few words to him, and he actually dared to take advantage of the situation. He even dared to ask such a question. However, Big Brother Chang himself did not show the slightest bit of displeasure. For some reason, this high and mighty original infant stage powerhouse that he did not know was exceptionally tolerant towards Lin Yi and answered all his questions. Little brother, since you asked, then there's nothing inconvenient about it. I won't hide it from you. I didn't know the specific information on this location, but I know a deacon from the Spiritual Beast clan. He told me. Big Brother Chang faintly smiled. A deacon from the Spiritual Beast clan? Linny could not help but be stunned. Only then did he remember a question that he had subconsciously ignored. He asked curiously, The star ink milk is such a good thing. Even if he knew about it, he would keep it for himself. Why would he tell you? That thing is useless to us. Just then, the ghostly voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Ah? Why? Aren't spiritual beasts of the original infant stage as well? Linny asked in astonishment. Spiritual beasts are different from you human cultivators. Spiritual beasts are born with innate talent. It is directly determined by the genes of different races. This is purely a natural attribute that differs from race to race and cannot be changed. The ghostly thing explained. To you humans, the star ink milk is a good thing that can change your physique. But to us spiritual beasts, it is not. Of course, it is not completely useless, but it is not that exaggerated. At most, it can only be used to increase one's capabilities and assist in cultivation. I see. Linny finally understood. Otherwise, if the star ink milk had the same miraculous effect on spiritual beasts, human cultivators would not even have a chance to use it. R1152. Chapter 4271. Although the original spirit beasts in the ruins had already been sentenced to death, there were still many powerful spirit beasts occupying the Lufeng forest. If they were also so eager for the star ink milk, they would have already plundered it before the miasma dissipated. Why would they leave it for human cultivators? They wouldn't even be able to get a share of it. However, this can also be considered a form of heaven's will. The star ink milk is clearly more useful to you humans, but it only appeared in the territory of the Spirit Beast clan. Otherwise, if it appeared in the territory of you humans, I reckon that there would have been carnage and rivers of blood. The ghostly thing cackled. Ugh, maybe. Linny didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was a joke, but with the nature of human practitioners, they'd be willing to fight each other for the slightest bit of benefit. Faced with the temptation of the star ink milk, especially one that could be produced continuously, it wasn't impossible for them to kill each other. While Linny was communicating with the ghostly thing with his primordial spirit, he was also paying attention to what was happening in the outside world. In the eyes of everyone else, there was nothing unusual. This is not strange because it is said that this thing is useless to the spirit beasts. Although Big Brother Chang's answer was not as detailed as the ghostly thing, it was the same. Oh. Linny put on a look of realization before sighing. I've heard people say that the spirit beasts occupy the South Island, but they rarely interact with the outside world. You're actually acquainted with one of the spirit beasts, and you're even able to get such important information from him? Normal people don't have this kind of luck. It is difficult for others to establish a relationship with the warden of the spirit beasts, but it is a piece of cake for me. Big Brother Chang smiled proudly and said, My father is the shopkeeper of the all-access gathering in the Wayark territorial waters. Although the spirit beasts are isolated from the outside world, they still need to trade and buy things from the outside world, and our Chamber of Commerce is the place they come to most often. All-access gathering? Hearing this name, Lin Yi's eyelids twitched slightly. Wasn't this one of the Chamber of Commerce giants that joined forces to deal with the Hong Chamber of Commerce? It was also a behemoth that ranked in the top 5. The deacon from the Spirit Beast clan that I mentioned earlier was the person in charge of liaising with our Chamber of Commerce. After a while, we became familiar with each other, which was why he gave me this opportunity. Big Brother Chang suggested again. What do you think? Little brother. This is a very rare opportunity. It must be fate that we met here. Do you want to go together? Linny hesitated. To be honest, he was indeed interested in the star ink milk, but this Brother Chang in front of him was inexplicably so attentive. He felt that there was something strange about it. After all, the example of Chu Bubi was right in front of him, so he had to be on guard. With Lin Yi's shrewdness, he would definitely be able to find a flaw in the other party's words if they were all lies. But if he was like Chu Bubi, who could mix the real with the fake, then it would be impossible to guard against. Lin Yi was hesitating. The ghostly thing's voice rang out in his mind again. What he said is true. Even though I haven't personally come to Lufeng Forest, I've heard people talk about the star ink milk produced in Audwa Cultivation City. It should be true. This thing is something that you can only find by chance. You might as well go and give it a try. With the ghostly thing, the elder of the Spirit Beast clan, vouching for him, Lin Yi immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He nodded inwardly, somewhat tempted. Little brother, what do you think? It can be considered a kind of fate for you to meet me here. If you miss this opportunity, you might lose the opportunity to obtain the star ink milk in the future. You might even regret it. Brother Chang saw that Lin Yi was tempted and struck while the iron was hot. Well, then I want to ask again. How much is there? If we join, will it be enough for so many people? Lin Yi asked carefully. In his opinion, there would definitely not be many rare items like the star ink milk. Furthermore, there were already 6 people in the other party. If the 2 of them joined in, it was hard to say whether they would be able to get a share. Comparing the strength of the 2 parties, even if Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao joined forces, they would not be able to contend against the 6 of them. If they couldn't even drink the soup, then they could only blame their bad luck and work for nothing. Little brother, your suspicions are not without reason. However, in my opinion, there is no need to worry too much. According to what my friend in charge of the spiritual beast said, the formation protecting the star ink milk has not been opened for 3 years, so it should have accumulated quite a bit. Brother Chang solemnly vowed. Then, how will we split it? Lin Yi continued to ask. Even if there was a lot of star ink milk, it still depended on how they were going to split it. If this Brother Chang asked for 8 to 10 caddies of star ink milk, and he had his Tao companions by his side, when it came to the two of them, it would definitely be difficult. You don't have to worry about this. We agreed that everyone can only fill 1 bottle at the beginning. As Brother Chang spoke, he took out a small spiritual jade bottle. The volume was not large, only the size of a bottle of floral water in the secular world. He smiled and said, "According to the order of joining the team, I will start first, then everyone will take it in turn. The 2 of you joined last, so naturally, you will have to wait until the end to take it. I believe that little brother can understand this, but I believe that there should be enough star ink milk. At the very least, the 2 of you will have 1 bottle left." Brother Chang did not directly pat his chest and say it, because that would make people not believe him. Saying it like this now seemed more pertinent and easier to win people's trust. Lin Yi thought for a moment. This division was fair. After all, the 2 of them had joined temporarily. Whether it was strength or relationship, they were not as good as the others. It was reasonable for them to have the last priority. As long as the other party did not do the deceitful thing of taking all the star ink milk in 1 scoop, there should be some gains according to this distribution method. If there was nothing, then they could only blame their bad luck. Of course, this did not rule out another possibility. That was, Brother Chang broke his promise. That would be a big problem. However, since they had come out to take the risk, they could not escape this risk in any case. If they really pursued perfection, they could only hide at home and not come out. Well, we will join. Thank you for your care. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other, and finally nodded in confirmation. Great, little brother is really extraordinary. You did not let me down. Brother Chang suddenly laughed after hearing this. The reason why he was willing to spend so much effort was to let Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao join the team together. If Lin Yi finally backed down and admitted defeat, it would really be a waste of time. To be continued. Chapter 4272. You flatter me. I am Ling Yi, and this is junior sister Huang from the same sect. How should I address you? Lin Yi took the initiative to introduce himself. Since he had decided to join the group, even if he was secretly on guard, he still had to do something to show his face. I am Chang Daoping. You two think highly of me. You can call me Brother Chang. Chang Daoping nodded faintly and then said to the other 5 people, You guys should also introduce yourselves. My name is Chao Shishir. The beautiful woman next to Lin Yi glanced at them with disdain. However, since Chang Daoping had spoken, they could only do as he said. They reluctantly said their names and were too lazy to say anything else. Luo Tuoxiang. Next was the younger brother at the peak of the late stage of the Gold Core realm. He was arrogant and didn't put Lin Yi and the other 2 little ants in his eyes. In contrast, Chang Daoping, a master of the original infant stage, was much more magnanimous than him. The other 3 people didn't say much and just said their names. 2 men and 1 woman were Hu Yuli, Fan Dongji, and Fang Miaojing. These people mocked Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao the moment they arrived. Now that they were afraid of Chang Daoping's power, they didn't dare to say anything. However, it was too much to expect them to be nice. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao only nodded faintly, not taking it to heart. They didn't have the habit of being snubbed, and Chang Daoping was the leader of the team. It didn't matter if their relationship with these people was good or bad. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao only nodded faintly, not taking it seriously. Chang Daoping didn't say much. He deliberately invited Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao to join the group. Naturally, he had his own reasons. As long as he could achieve his goal, everything else didn't matter. As for how everyone got along with each other, it was not something he needed to care about. No matter how tense the atmosphere was, it didn't matter as long as they didn't piss off Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. All right. Let's go. Chang Daoping commanded and immediately led the way. Chao Shishir and the others followed closely behind without saying a word. In the end, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and followed behind the crowd. Chang Daoping led the way at an extremely fast speed. He was clearly shuttling through the dense forest, and his footsteps were clearly not hurried, but his speed was inexplicably fast. One moment he was here, and the next moment he was 50 feet away. If the people behind him were not Golden Core stage experts, if it was a Foundation Establishment expert, even if it was a Foundation Establishment expert who had completed the Foundation Establishment realm, they might not even be able to keep up with Chang Daoping's footsteps, let alone others. Even the group of Golden Core stage experts had to constantly consume the true qi in their bodies to keep up with Chang Daoping, who was at the front. During the journey, Chao Shishir, Luo Tuoxiang and the others deliberately turned back to look at the two of them, as if they wanted to see them make a fool of themselves. After all, both of them were only at the early stage of the Gold Core realm. Chang Daoping's speed made it difficult for them to keep up with him, let alone these two at the bottom. They probably had to use all their strength. Only then could they barely keep up and not fall behind. However, when they saw the calm expressions of Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao at this moment, their expressions suddenly became as strange as if they had eaten shit. The two of them felt even more relaxed than them. Even if they were strong and calm, they also had this kind of strength, right? These two bumpkins at the early stage of the Gold Core realm. Could it be that they were still hiding some powerful trump card? At least it should not be as simple as it looked on the surface. In fact, the current speed was not beyond the range of the two people's endurance. Not to mention Lin Yi, even Huang Xiaotao, who had been doing trial missions in the dense forest all year round, could completely adapt. Don't forget her martial arts skills and ability. The virgin forest was her best home. Of course, such a fast journey for a long time would consume a lot of qi reserves. However, Lin Yi had been holding her hand and could replenish her qi at any time, so naturally there was no pressure. After rushing for 4 to 6 hours, Chang Daoping, who was in front, finally stopped and gestured for everyone to rest for a while. Everyone nodded silently and sat cross-legged to recover their qi. Chang Daoping himself did not speak, which was completely different from the amiable and approachable style he had shown before. The atmosphere was quite heavy. Although Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were full of qi, in order to not attract attention, they also sat cross-legged to recover. Lin Yi could not help but ask, "Brother Chang, I have a question. You have been leading the way all the way, and it seems that you have not used us in any way. Why did you invite us to join and let us share for no reason? Only by showing enough value would people come to rope you in, and then you would have enough status and right to speak." However, in the current situation, no matter how Lin Yi looked at it, he felt that the two of them were superfluous. They were simply called to freeload the Star Ink milk for no reason. There must be something wrong when things were abnormal. This matter felt strange no matter how he thought about it. "You will know in a while," Chang Daoping replied indifferently, but he only said this before continuing to meditate with his eyes closed, and he paid no further attention to Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. Lin Yi originally wanted to ask another question, but when he saw Chang Daoping's attitude, it had completely turned 180 degrees from when he was trying to rope him in earlier. Obviously, Chang Daoping was unwilling to pay attention to him, so it was useless to say anything more at this moment. However, with the speed at which this person changed his attitude like flipping a book, the slight uneasiness in Lin Yi's heart was instantly magnified. This person is obviously not too reliable. If he doesn't keep his word later, then the two of us will probably really suffer a loss. However, despite his misgivings, Lin Yi did not reveal any of it on his face, and he was still carefree as before. In any case, with the combined combat strength of him and Huang Xiaotao, if they were to really fall out and fight in the end, it was still uncertain who would be the one laughing in the end. Moreover, from Chang Daoping's words, he could also tell that he must have a special intention to deliberately rope them in. Before they were put to use, he would not easily fall out with them. The only thing that needed to be paid attention to was whether he would use the lives of Gold Core stage experts as a sacrifice like Chu Bubi did before. He must be careful about this. After resting for about 1 hour, Chang Daoping once again led everyone on their journey. After walking for another 2 hours, Chang Daoping, who was leading the way, stopped. Everyone only felt that there was suddenly a clear view in front of them, and they actually felt like they had walked out of a primeval forest. Just now, it was still a dense forest that was overgrown with vegetation, and every step forward was difficult. However, there was nothing in front of them, and it was barren as far as the eye could see. There were no towering trees that were dozens of meters tall, nor were there dense weeds and shrubs. The only thing that everyone could see was a real wasteland. To be continued. Chapter 4273. Are we out of the Lufeng forest? Chao Shishir couldn't help but ask after being stunned for a moment. Everyone else also looked at each other. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other, not understanding what was going on. The wasteland in front of them seemed endless, and while they knew that it wasn't quite possible, they couldn't help but think the same way as Chao Shishir. Was Chang Daoping leading the way too fast, and accidentally leading everyone out of Lufeng forest? How is that possible? Listen up, this is the ruins of Ao Dual Cultivation City. Chang Daoping chuckled and pointed at the empty wasteland in front of them. Huh! Everyone was stunned. They opened their mouths wide and said in surprise, What kind of ruins is this? It's just a wasteland, there's nothing here. Their initial excitement immediately dissipated. If it was really as Chang Daoping said that this place was the ruins of the legendary Ao Dual Cultivation City, then everyone was really disappointed. What kind of treasures could there be in such a barren place? Even if there was, they could see it at a glance. How could they have the chance to look for it now? Huang Xiaotao gently pulled on Lin Yi's sleeve. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Even she couldn't help but suspect that Chang Daoping deliberately brought everyone to this barren place. Did he have some ulterior motives? Perhaps this person had the same sinister intentions as Chu Bubi? No matter how they looked at it, it was too ridiculous to say that this place was the ruins of Ao Dual Cultivation City. Even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe it. However, after being surprised for a moment, Lin Yi calmed down. Even if Chang Daoping had ulterior motives, he wouldn't deceive everyone like this. At first glance, the place in front of them seemed to be a wasteland, as if there really was nothing there. However, if they used their divine sense to perceive it, they would find that there seemed to be a giant wall in front of them. Divine sense couldn't penetrate it at all. There must be something mysterious here. While everyone was puzzled, Luo Tuoxiang seemed to have sensed something. He immediately raised the corner of his mouth, and wanted to show off in front of everyone. He stepped forward. Chang Daoping shouted coldly, Come back! Do you want to get lost in there and never see the light of day for the rest of your life? What? Isn't this a smokescreen? Luo Tuoxiang was startled and quickly retreated. He could also feel that this place was unusual. I thought it was just a smokescreen to fool people. Illusion? Chang Daoping scoffed and responded, I've already told you that this is the Odor Cultivation City's ruin. Do you think the spirit beast's former important city would use such a childish trick like a smokescreen? Luo Tuoxiang shrunk his neck in embarrassment. When the others heard this, they finally reacted and looked at Chang Daoping. Listen up, this is a formation, and it's not just a simple camouflage. If you step in without finding the correct path, you will be lost in the barren land for the rest of your life, unable to walk out. Even if others want to save you, they won't be able to, Chang Daoping said to everyone. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. At first glance, there was nothing special about this desert except that it was a bit out of place. Who would have thought that there would be such dangers hidden within it? 9 out of 10 people who didn't know the trick would probably fall for it. Many people could see the mysteries hidden in this barren land. However, most of them would try to break the formation like Luo Tuoxiang did. If they tried, wouldn't they be throwing themselves into danger? Everyone had goosebumps before they even saw what the Odor Cultivation City's ruin looked like. They didn't dare to let their guard down. This place could kill people without spilling blood. Big Brother Chang, what kind of formation is this? Chao Sure asked the question on everyone's mind. Moon shadow array, Chang Daoping said indifferently. When everyone revealed a puzzled expression, he continued to explain. This is a very brilliant formation. It has both concealment and disorientation effects. If someone doesn't understand it, they will never be able to enter the odor cultivation city's ruin. Brother Chang, since you know about this formation, you must have a way to break it, right? Linny suddenly asked. That's right. The so-called lunar shadow formation, as the name suggests, is definitely related to the moon. I've studied this formation before. It requires 8 extremely powerful people to set it up. Correspondingly, in order to break it, there must be 8 people, each occupying a specific position, and only then can they break it. Chang Daoping looked at Linny and said, Now you know why I asked you two to come together. Linny nodded. The Lu Feng Road's transfer array could only send 6 people at a time. There couldn't be one more or one less. Moreover, because the location of the transfer was random, even if Chang Daoping knew that 8 people were needed to break the formation, he couldn't gather 8 people. Unless he mobilized a large force and gathered 12 people at once, then divided them into 2 teams and teleported in. Afterwards, he would think of a way to gather the 2 teams. But this was too troublesome, and the feasibility was obviously not high. Moreover, with 12 people coming at once, he reckoned that there wouldn't be enough star ink milk for so many people. Therefore, there was only one method left for Chang Daoping. That was to bring a team in first, and then find a way to find another 2 cultivators in Lu Feng Forest to temporarily join him. As there were many cultivators who came to Lu Feng Forest to adventure, this method was obviously more reliable. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, who had been separated from their teammates, were naturally excellent candidates in Chang Daoping's eyes. Firstly, they met the requirements of the number of people. Secondly, their strength was only at the early golden core stage. They could meet the requirements of breaking the formation, and at the same time, they couldn't do anything with their strength. It was easy to use and safe, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It was precisely because of this that Chang Daoping, who had always been strong and overbearing, was so enthusiastic to Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. In the end, it was all for the sake of breaking the formation. After figuring this out, Lin Yi's vigilance against Chang Daoping was slightly relaxed. If what he said about breaking the formation was true, then he didn't have to worry too much. At least, he could ensure that he wouldn't be like Chu Bubi, who was tricked by him into offering sacrifices and died in vain. After all, the original purpose of setting up the lunar shadow array was for the Spirit Beast clan to hide and protect Audwa Cultivation City. They could not possibly offer sacrifices to 8 experts every time they entered the city, right? That would be too ridiculous. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4274. Brother Chang, let's hurry up and break the array, shall we? Luo Tuoxiang said eagerly. His strength was already at the peak of the late gold core realm. Apart from Chang Daoping, he was the closest to the nascent soul realm. If he could get the star ink milk at this time, it would be of great significance to him. What's the hurry? Do you have a brain? Chang Daoping rolled his eyes at him and scolded him coldly. Ah? Brother Chang, Luo Tuoxiang was inexplicably scolded again. Lin Yi looked at this scene and could not help but smile secretly. Chang Daoping looked unfathomable, and this little brother of his seemed to have a high level at first glance. However, no matter how he looked at it, he looked like an idiot. I've already said that the moon shadow array is related to the moon. If we want to break the array, we naturally have to rely on the moonlight. Look, is there moonlight now? Chang Daoping curled his lips slightly. Everyone came to a realization. At this moment, although the sky was gradually darkening, it was not completely dark yet. Naturally, there could not be moonlight. They could only wait quietly. However, they could not help but worry in their hearts. Could they really see the moon here? Even putting aside the weather conditions, there was still a thick layer of miasma above their heads. During the day, even the sunlight could not completely penetrate it, so the light was so weak, let alone the moon at night. Although they were puzzled, they did not dare to rashly ask Chang Daoping. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao did not understand him, but these people were very clear about Chang Daoping's character. This brother Chang was not the kind of person who would answer every question. No matter what they did, everyone just needed to follow his orders. If they asked too many questions, they would only be annoyed and scolded. Therefore, they could understand why Chang Daoping was so surprised when he tried to rope in Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao. About 2 hours later, the sky finally turned completely dark. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, a few beams of gentle moonlight sprinkled down from above their heads. Although it looked very weak at first glance, it was still a beautiful sight. When it shone on the wasteland in front of them, it was surprisingly bright. Everyone suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did they remember that this was not a dense forest. Of course, this little bit of moonlight was not enough in the dense forest, but in this empty wasteland, it was enough. At first, Lin Yi subconsciously thought that the secrets of the moon shadow formation lay in the moonlight that shone through the miasma, and that the moonlight was pointing to the formation's location. However, Lin Yi immediately knew that he was wrong, because although there were only a few beams of moonlight, it was actually the location of the array. At first glance, it was indeed very misleading, but upon closer inspection, one would find that they were constantly moving. It was not the moonlight itself that was moving, but the miasma layer above them was moving. But if it was not the location indicated by the moonlight, then what was the key? As such, Daoping array, Lin Yi, Luo, and Luo would be, and Luo, O, Lin, Yi, and Chen, and Lin, Long, and Long, Lin, Yi, and Lin, and Lin, and Chang, dynasty, and moon of. Everyone did not know what was going on, and could only stare at Chang Daoping. They were waiting for him to dispel everyone's doubts, but this brother Chang was indifferent. Not to mention breaking the array, it seemed like he was too lazy to even move. He calmly looked at the wasteland in front of him. Chang Daoping did not say anything, so everyone did not dare to ask. They could only wait patiently by the side. Just like that, they waited until midnight. As the moonlight grew brighter and brighter, they looked at each other in dismay, not daring to act rashly. "All right, it's about time." Chang Daoping finally stood up. Everyone instantly became excited and eager. However, when Lin Yi took a look, the wasteland in front of him did not feel any different from before. It was just that the light was slightly brighter, and there was no mysterious array formation appearing. "Where is this so-called lunar shadow array?" Lin Yi was puzzled. However, looking at Chang Daoping's expression, he didn't think he was putting on an act, right? Wait, moon shadow array. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Lin Yi's mind. When he looked at the wasteland in front of him again, he finally understood something. Previously, when he observed this wasteland, other than being barren, there was nothing special about it. However, now that he took a closer look, especially when he paid special attention to the shadows on the ground, he discovered that something was amiss. The wasteland was bumpy and uneven, so it was not strange that there were shadows everywhere. Ordinary people would not notice them. However, Lin Yi's gaze landed on 8 rather special shadows. One in the middle was in the shape of a half-moon, while the other 7 were in the shape of stars. If these 7 star-shaped shadows were connected together, it would be a well-known star array, the Big Dipper. And in the center of it was the shadow of the half-moon. The wasteland was at most bumpy and uneven. If there was no special setting, how could such strange-shaped shadows appear out of nowhere? This time, Lin Yi was 100% sure that the Big Dipper and the shadow of the half-moon must be the lunar shadow array that Chang Daoping mentioned. While Lin Yi was speculating, Chang Daoping took out a small flag from his backpack. At first glance, it looked like the cheering flags used by football fans in the secular world. There was nothing special about it. However, after careful observation, he found that this small flag was not as simple as it looked. There was a profound mystery in it that was almost on par with the array formations that Lin Yi had seen before. Array flag? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Although he did not have this thing, he could recognize it. This was a very professional array tool. Whether it was setting up or breaking arrays, it was absolutely indispensable. Moreover, array flags weren't something that could be casually used by any expert. The skills required to use them weren't inferior to those of alchemy and blacksmithing. They needed to be specially trained before they could use them. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to use them, and they wouldn't even know how to use them. From this, it could be seen that Chang Daoping was either an array formation expert, or he had specially studied it to break the lunar shadow array. Regardless of which one it was, this person was not simple. Go there. Chang Daoping pointed at Luo Tuoxiang and then pointed at a spot in the wasteland. As Linny expected, this spot was one of the Big Dipper's 7 stars. Ah? Brother Chang, didn't you say that we would not be able to come out once we entered? Luo Tuoxiang was shocked. He looked at Chang Daoping in horror, and quickly waved his hands as he retreated. Once one entered the lunar shadow array, one would be completely lost in it. No one would be able to save them. This was what Chang Daoping had said earlier. Chapter 4275. Whether it was his background or strength, Chang Daoping had always been the strongest in the team. No one could question his decision, not even his Dao companion, let alone a mere little brother. No. Brother Chang, I didn't mean it that way. Luo Tuoxiang's face turned pale and he waved his hands. Brother Chang, of course I will follow your instructions, but this. Luo Tuoxiang had followed Chang Daoping to the Audwa cultivation city remnant for the star ink milk. He hadn't even seen the shadow of the star ink milk, yet Chang Daoping wanted him to enter the moon's shadow array. Wasn't that just sending him to his death? Sure enough, he was an idiot who didn't know anything. Lin Yu watched this scene and shook his head with a smile. However, Chao Shishir and the others didn't have the same eyesight as him. They all looked nervous, afraid that after Luo Tuoxiang, Chang Daoping would point at them. Do you really think I'm sending you to your death by letting you in? Chang Daoping snorted coldly. Although you can't barge into the moon shadow array, I have the array flag in my hand. As long as you don't wander around, you won't get into trouble. What are you afraid of? What a useless piece of trash! So that's how it is. Luo Tuoxiang finally understood and didn't dare to hesitate. He quickly ran in the direction Chang Daoping pointed at. Although he was still panicking, Chang Daoping still needed everyone's help to break the array. Luo Tuoxiang didn't think that Brother Chang would kill him. He definitely had his reasons for doing so. The moon shadow array had a disorienting effect. Everyone thought that Luo Tuoxiang would disappear after he ran in, but nothing happened even after Luo Tuoxiang stood still. Not only could he see normally, but there was also no obstruction of sound. It felt no different from an ordinary wasteland. Linny nodded his head. Although he couldn't see any changes with the naked eye, if he used his divine sense, he would discover that there was a faint fluctuation of qi between Luo Tuoxiang and the array flag in Chang Daoping's hand, connecting them together. Among the acquaintances that Linny knew, the Will of Heaven was quite knowledgeable about formations. When they were chatting in Nakajima, Linny had heard him talk about it. Although there were various ways to break a formation, they all had one thing in common. That was to use an array to break an array. When many people worked together to break the array, they would use the array flags as the array core. Everyone would temporarily form an array formation and then use the array formation to break the array formation. Although there were also situations where a single person broke the array formation, even then, array flags were needed. It could be understood as a single person forming the array formation. Just like now, because of the array flags, Luo Tuoxiang and Chang Daoping had actually become a temporary array formation. Therefore, even if he walked into the moon shadow array, he would not be disturbed at all. This was because he was protected by the temporary array, and it looked like he was within the range of the moon shadow array. Actually, he was not trapped by the lunar shadow formation at all. It was the same as standing outside. What they needed to do next was for everyone to join in one by one and maximize the power of this temporary formation. In the end, he was able to break the lunar shadow formation. Sure, you go there. Sure enough, Chang Daoping immediately said to Chao Sure. The position he indicated was naturally one of the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. Chao Sure opened her mouth, feeling a little afraid. However, when she saw Chang Daoping's serious expression, she was afraid that she would be scolded like Luo Tuoxiang. Immediately, she did not dare to say anything. After dawdling for a moment, she finally gathered her courage and walked over. Following that, Chang Daoping also sent the other 3 to their respective positions in the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. When it was finally Lin Yi and Huang Xiutao's turn, Chang Daoping was suddenly stunned. This was because the 2 of them actually walked to the side by themselves. Brat, things have come to this. Do you want to be deserters? When Luo Tuoxiang saw this, he immediately jumped up and said mockingly, Humph, cowardly country bumpkins. I knew that these 2 people are unreliable. They are useless. At the crucial moment, they will only harm their teammates. When he said this, he seemed to have forgotten his own reaction. Just now, when Chang Daoping asked him to be the first to enter, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants. In the end, when he realized that there was no danger, he became arrogant. That's right. We have already come in. These 2 people actually want to sneak away. Isn't it a waste of time and putting all of us in danger? Chao Sure also sneered and said to Chang Daoping, Brother Chang, you can't let the 2 of them slip away just like that. When the other 3 saw this, they also echoed and scolded. After all, standing in their current positions, they had to take risks no matter what. If Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao ran away like that, wouldn't they take such a big risk for nothing? What do you mean? I have said so much to you. In the end, you only regret it now. That's not right? Chang Daoping's face was also a little gloomy. 8 people were needed to break the array. If Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao did not cooperate, it would be useless no matter how capable he was. Huh! Could it be that I guessed wrong? Brother Chang, you don't plan to let us stand here? Lin Yi pointed to the remaining 2 positions of the Big Dipper not far in front of him. Hey, if you want to get cold feet, then get cold feet. You are obviously a coward, but you still dare to put on a show? What a joke! When Luo Tuoxiang saw this, he became even more unbridled. He pointed at Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao and laughed. The lunar shadow array is such a profound array. Brat, don't tell me that even you know how to break it. Ha ha! He is just an early-stage golden core bumpkin. If even this kind of person can break the array, then pigs can climb trees. For this trip to the ruins, in order to break this array, even Brother Chang specially prepared for half a year. Chao Sure curled her lips and said. She did not know about the lunar shadow array previously, but as Chang Daoping's dual cultivation partner, she was very clear about what Chang Daoping had been doing previously. In order to study the array, Chang Daoping specially went into seclusion to prepare for half a year. From the previous performance, Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were clearly the same as them. They had never heard of the lunar shadow array. In order to break the lunar shadow array, even Chang Daoping had to go through so much trouble. If Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were able to see through the mystery of the array so easily, it was simply impossible. It was simply a fool's dream. So, these 2 bumpkins must be trying to get cold feet and still quibble here. What a joke! Luo Tuoxiang sneered. Although there was no enmity between them, and they had never even met before, he disliked Lin Yi from the first moment he saw him. Whether it was Chang Daoping's enthusiasm towards him, or Lin Yi's indifferent temperament, he hated it to the extreme. He could not wait to trample on this brat. Floating Astronomy. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.